Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Harry Potter was in Team 7. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by EmLights and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 The Beginning. Silence. Most people believe your life flashes before your eyes right before you die. Your memories, the places you've been, the people you've loved, and the things you've treasured, all on display in your mind as you take your last few breaths. People say you can tell whether you lived an eventful life or a wasted one in those last moments. Harry was no exception. He lay crumpled on the ground in the only place he'd ever called home. Sadly, the Hogwarts he knew and loved was no longer standing. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, now only a mountain of stone, had been destroyed in the final battle between light and dark. He would miss Hogwarts. As he thought of the years he'd spent there and the memories created, Harry regretted he wouldn't be able to finish his 7th and final year. It was Hermione's hope for the three of them to go back to school after all the fighting was over and graduate together. Unfortunately, with Hermione and Ron both 6 feet under and Harry not far behind, this idea would now just be a nice optimistic dream. Harry guessed he lived an okay life though. In his 19 years, he gained great friends, learned about magic, and made some wonderful memories. Except for the last 2 years, which he did not want to think about just now. In all honesty, he wished he could erase those horrible memories so even in death he wouldn't remember them. The war had been brutal. After Dumbledore's untimely death, Harry begrudgingly became the leader of the Light. He never understood why people pushed for him to lead. He was young and inexperienced, but people clung to him and his name, and in the end there wasn't much choice in the matter. He led them through many fights and conflicts and took each death as his own failure. He lost many allies and friends through the war and each weighed heavily on his heart. It's good I'm dying now, he thought, strangely cheerful. There isn't anything left in this world to live for. Everyone I love is waiting for me on the other side. He looked around while straining his eyes through dirty glasses. He saw a single gold post left standing very close to where he resided. I must be on the Quidditch pitch then. He was lying in the place where only a few years before he had proudly held the Quidditch cup in his hands, celebrating his final win as Quidditch captain. The memory of the win was fleeting, but seeing his friends happy and cheering brought a painful smile to his face. Ron, Hermione, Ginny, everyone, I'll be seeing all of you soon. As he continued to look around, he glanced at all the bodies surrounding him. Most were unrecognizable. In the collection of rubble, bodies, and blood, Harry couldn't distinguish between his allies and the Death Eaters. The war fought over blood. How ironic that now their pure blood is mixed in with all the mudbloods and blood traitors too. He spotted his newly acquired wand, a black elm taken from a fallen Death Eater a few months back, splintered a few inches from his fingers. The wand had accepted him well enough, but was nothing like his own holly and phoenix feather wand. How he missed his old wand. Lord Voldemort had gleefully snapped it after one of the many encounters the two had over the years. Harry finally spotted a corpse he did recognize. His eyes welled with tears as he spotted the greasy hair and hooked nose of his former potions master, whose body oozed from deep lacerations. It appeared the Death Eaters had taken great pleasure in torturing their notorious traitor. From the looks of the many broken bodies around him, Professor Snape didn't fall without taking a few Death Eaters with him. Hope the bastard got them good, Harry thought proudly. Once this is all over and I see him again, I'm going to force him and my dad to make up. Too much has happened for them to continue their schoolyard rivalry. I'm sure Mom will help too. Harry closed his eyes, picturing his family and friends all together again. Everyone was happy and laughing with no thoughts of war or death. The scene brought a brief sense of peace. I do regret not being able to settle down and have kids though, Harry thought bitterly. I think I would have been a pretty good dad. Having grown up in a house devoid of love and kindness, he was sure his children would have grown up in a loving and happy home. It would have been nice to have a house filled with lots of kids, he thought. Just like the Weasleys. They were always happy. He forced himself not to think about what happened to his favorite retreated family once the war started. Harry's breathing became difficult and the wetness building beneath him expanded. Dying was painful and his entire body ached. Bleeding out, Harry found, was not the easiest way to die. Especially out here on the cold, hard ground all alone. He pondered what the headlines would say about his current predicament. Rita Skeeter would have a field day for sure. He could see it now. Harry Potter, the chosen one, the boy who lived, destroys the beloved wizarding landmark Hogwarts and defeats the Dark Lord in the process. He started chuckling but choked on the liquid in his lungs and coughed. He had done it though. The scorched parts of what were left of Voldemort's body were scattered about 20 feet away from where Harry himself had fallen. He had finally killed the bastard who made his life hell. He avenged all of the people this monster had destroyed. But he was years too late to save anyone. He thought about all the people he had lost. His best friends, Ron and Hermione, the whole Weasley family, Neville, Luna, Sirius, Remus, Dumbledore, Hagrid, and countless others who had followed him until they met their untimely deaths. A single tear fell, though he couldn't feel it through the ever-increasing coldness of his body. Harry's raspy voice spoke softly into the eerie silence. "I'm sorry, everyone. It took me way too long to kill him. I hope you can forgive me." His ragged and painful breathing slowed. He closed his eyes, waiting for death to arrive and finally take him to his family and friends who were waiting for him on the other side. "Here I come." Harry welcomed the approaching darkness. Harry saw a blinding light floating serenely above him. This must be the end, he thought, watching the light slowly approach him. He closed his eyes and basked in the sudden warmth. His worn and aching body suddenly felt rejuvenated and he no longer felt the cold hard ground beneath him. He felt levitated in a bright ray of sunshine. Strangely enough, Harry's eyes snapped open to find he was indeed suspended in the air. He panicked, flailing his body around, failing to find his balance without the ground for support. "Calm down, my child. Everything is as it should be." He froze as a disembodied voice projected through the wide abyss surrounding him. 3 indistinguishable forms appeared before him with nothing but a faint outline to show their figures. "I must still be dying if my hallucinations are this unreal," Harry thought. He blinked rapidly, trying to dispel the imaginary people from his vision. "Harry Potter." He looked up at the middle figure who'd spoken. "You have led a difficult life, and this fault resides with us, the Fates, for sending the prophecy between you and Tom Riddle to our chosen seer. We placed you in the position as the world's savior and took away your chance at a normal life. We now wish to redeem ourselves and gift you with, as your headmaster would say, your next great adventure." "What do you mean?" Harry asked curiously. He figured that, even though this was just a dying hallucination, he might as well play along with his delusions. He was indeed enjoying the experience of warmth in this hallucination, so he was fine with it lasting a bit longer. "As you are on the brink of death, it is easy for us to send your body and soul to a different dimension. Think of it as a second chance to live the life you were deprived of." "How can you send me to a different dimension? Or rather, what is a different dimension?" In the lull of the warmth, the talk of dimensions was still strange, and he was curious how his subconscious could have come up with it. It was a bit far-fetched for his imagination. He heard chuckling amongst the shadows. "We are the Fates. There are many things we can do that you mere humans cannot even begin to fathom. And to answer your other question, dimensions are different worlds completely separate from one another." The center figure leaned toward Harry slowly. "But there is no time for us to explain everything to you just yet. All you need to know is that for your selfless and courageous acts and for the defeat of a terrible Dark Lord, you have been blessed by the Fates. And furthermore, an old wizard has requested that you carry on his bloodline in your new life." I'm not quite sure I'm following." Harry was interrupted by faint laughter echoing from the 3 dark shapes. "We are running out of time, and I am not yet finished," the center figure continued. "When you arrive at your new home, you most likely will not be able to understand the language. It takes time for the information you need to be assimilated by your mind, so be patient as you will need the necessary information to blend in." The heat around Harry continued to increase and his body shifted uncomfortably. "Because of the influx of information, you may develop some temporary blank spots in the memories of your past life, but don't be alarmed. This is just so the emotions from your past memories will not consume your conscience as you are assimilating to this new life. You have the choice, however, to leave your memories behind if you wish." "Hang on, I don't want to lose any memories." Even though this was a hallucination created by his slowly dying mind, he couldn't help but feel his heart aching at the thought of losing the memories of his loved ones. "Calm down, child. You will only have blank spots temporarily. If you wish to keep your memories, then they will stay with you. We do not want you to live in the past though. This gift of a new life has been bestowed on you. Do not disregard this chance by staying in the past and not living life to its fullest." Harry just stared unblinkingly at the middle shadow. It was simply too bizarre, too unreal for him to comprehend. "You should start believing this, Harry James Potter, because I assure you this is all real. Now, as you are to become an heir to this wizard, you will see some changes in your magic. Also, the magic in this dimension is very different from what you are used to. You will see once you get there. Secondly, there will be another heir coming soon after you. Your magical sibling, if you will. She died earlier on in this war, so it will take us longer to send her to you." "A sibling?" Harry echoed in frustration, all thoughts of hallucinations gone from his mind. "None of this makes any sense. Why can't you explain yourselves?" Harry did not like dealing with these so-called fates. Instead of answering his questions, they were only adding to his confusion. "We believe in learning through experience," one of the figures stated smugly. "But we will give you just a little help before you go." Without further warning, the figure rushed toward Harry with frightening speed and thrust a clouded hand straight through Harry's skull. Too stunned to move, there was a burst of pain and heat, and Harry was instantly accosted by foreign symbols and sounds spinning rapidly through his mind. There will also be a small side effect from traveling to a different dimension while you are still alive. You'll discover it soon enough. We hope you are ready. Before Harry could blink, he was pushed firmly by something and started plummeting through an endless sea of white clouds. Harry couldn't answer as he plunged further away from the dark figures above him. His vision was starting to fade and his consciousness with it. Before he blacked out completely, he heard a faint echo in his ears. "Good luck, Harry James Potter." As soon as Harry disappeared from their view, the three figures looked at each other in silence. "What memories did you take from him?" the figure on the left asked curiously. "I took his most traumatic memories of the war. The ones I hope he never regains." The three stared back at the spot Harry had disappeared from, as though they could still see him and were assessing him with a critical eye. "Have we done the right thing?" one of them asked finally. "To tell him this is a second chance, only. What we have done is for the good of this world," another stated decisively. "He will understand in time." "That poor boy," the third said quietly, before the three fell into silence once again. Kakashi sat in a tree, hovering noiselessly over a campfire. The smell of alcohol encumbered his highly sensitive nose. The unsuspecting group below laughed boisterously, showing off their stolen prizes to one another. The sounds of shake glasses being clinked together echoed through the forest, followed by drunken cheers. "That's a damn great haul." one of the men yelled happily, clapping another on the back. "Too bad we got no women in the wagon," another added sadly and hiccuped. "Why we always unlucky and hit the wagons with all men. If we had some nice ladies here, we'd have a lot more fun tonight." A few others nodded in agreement. "There's that red light district in Tanigakure. We got enough money to have fun with lots of women now. And lots o' sake." More cheers erupted from the suggestion. "Bakusui, you's always wanting to go to the red light district. This is why you's always broke." The others laughed and they all continued to drink merrily. "Having fun over there, Goro?" one of them asked the man sitting on a log away from the group. The lookout growled and stabbed his sword into the ground, obviously cross about missing out on the drinking, and they all burst into raucous laughter again. Kakashi sighed inaudibly as the group then started drunkenly singing. "These people are the worst bandits I've ever seen." A signal from his left spurred him into action. Kakashi leapt onto the closest target, the lookout a few feet from the camp, and cut his throat before the man could utter a sound. The green blur shot through the remaining 5 targets, all of who could not react fast enough to defend themselves. Kakashi scanned the clearing, making sure all of the bandits were disposed of before casually approaching his comrade. This is the 5th group of bandits we've come across," he muttered, kicking a sake bottle out of his path. "Genins could have handled this easily. It's been 2 weeks and there haven't been any signs of foreign ninja anywhere in this forest like we thought." I nodded. "Yes, my esteemed rival. But we must continue our youthful pursuit. The Hokage would not have sent us to this specific location if he did not think there was trouble." 2 weeks of scouting the forest between the border of the land of rivers and Konoha had left the two finding absolutely nothing that fit their mission parameters. The Hokage had given them a very vague mission to look for something out of the ordinary. Kakashi had spent the last 2 weeks pondering what the Hokage could have meant by this, but still the answer eluded him. After they cleared the area of stolen items and hid any trace of a campsite, the two prepared to leave. "We still have 2 weeks left of this mission," Guy continued. "Let us do our best and even if we find nothing, we can still valiantly rid this forest of the bandits and return the items unjustly stolen from the good merchants of Konoha." Guy shot Kakashi a blinding smile and a thumbs up. Kakashi ignored his teammate as he pulled out an orange book and hid his face behind the pages. "Ah, Kakashi, always so hip and cool," Guy said enthusiastically as they set off. Why had the Hokage sent them on this fool's errand? Kakashi thought as he gracefully jumped from branch to branch, his face still buried in the orange book. Does he know something they didn't? Regardless of the reason, Kakashi resigned himself to spending the next 2 weeks hunting drunken bandits and dealing with Guy's youthfulness. Or so he thought. End Chapter 1. Chapter 2 The Forest. Begin flashback. "Sweetie, you can't come with me," the man stated, sliding his wand into his arm holster hastily. "This battle will be extremely dangerous and you already need a healer to take a look at that leg." He watched as she tried not to limp, walking closer to the front door. "You can barely put any weight on it as it is. And you still need to replace your wand after what happened last time." "Dad, I'm supposed to be out there though," she began slowly, ignoring the exasperated look her father gave her. "The father told me. They said it was very important." Her father sighed. Having a stubborn 16-year-old daughter was difficult, especially one as special as his. He took a deep breath to calm himself and turned to face his daughter once more. "I can already tell that whatever I say to you will be futile." The blank stare he received was confirmation enough. He walked over to an old cabinet and took out an old wand, carrying it lovingly to his daughter. "This wand, it was your mother's. You are so much like her. I have no doubt it will work well for you. With this, you'll have your mother's protection out there if I'm not able to help. This wand is precious to me, so I am expecting you to bring it back. Please, don't do anything too reckless. You're all I have left." She put her own broken wand in the holster fastened to her ankles and clasped her mother's wand gently in her palm. She then pulled her father into a warm embrace. "This is a precious gift indeed. Don't worry, I'll be back before the next issue is published." "That's my girl," her father said and kissed her forehead. Hours before the battle ended, she found her next and last opponent. Spells were fired rapidly as she danced around the Death Eater. Her unique dodging, though it looked more like a strange jig, helped her avoid most of the curses sent her way. She, on the other hand, caught him with an odd string of jelly legs, the tickling curse, and a confusion jinx, which caused him to send a cutting curse at his own legs instead of hers. Shaking off the effects of the spells, he growled angrily and began firing curses with gusto. The injury to her leg caused her to falter enough for a sectum sempra to hit her in her left forearm. She was knocked to the ground with a cry of pain, and the Death Eater took that moment to disarm her. She struggled to stand, her left arm hanging lifelessly against her side, seeping blood. She looked around quickly to find her mother's wand laying 10 feet to her left, too far for her to reach in time. The man laughed in her face as she knelt wandless in front of him. "You put up a good fight, little girl, but in the end, the Dark Lord's followers will always triumph." Without hesitation, she quickly pulled out her own wand from her ankle and waved it towards the man. A destructive blast surged out of the broken wand and promptly blew up not only her, but also her attacker. The next thing she saw was a great white light. "So, you must be the Fada," she said calmly into the abyss. The lone man was found standing in the empty battlefield days after the battle ended. He looked out of place, dressed in a crisp black suit with a glaringly yellow bow tie and his hair carefully combed. His leather shoes were coated in mud and debris, but the man didn't seem to notice or particularly care. A few hours before, the man would have been seen searching the grounds with fierce determination until he found an abandoned wand. He now stood, cradling the wand tenderly in his hands, as he silently wept. He wept for his loving wife, whose devotion to her research led him to raising their daughter on his own. He wept for his gifted and caring daughter who deserved a life much greater and longer than the one she was given. He also wept of the realization he would now have to brace this world without the two that gave him his reason to live. There was no body to be found, nothing left to properly bury. He cursed his inability to protect his only living kin from the terrors of the world and wished he had just locked her up until this whole bloody war was over. But she would never have allowed it. Her inherited stubbornness and belief in what is right would have helped her find a way around that as well. He checked his watch before apparating back to his home. He slowly made his way to an artfully made tombstone and a small box ready to be buried. He opened up the wooden box and peered longingly at the contents. He decided to bury her most precious possessions, hoping they would carry on her spirit to the next life. Resting right on top of an old butterbeer necklace and some bright red radish earrings was a picture of his daughter. She was smiling brightly at the camera and waving enthusiastically. He gazed at the photograph for what seemed like an eternity, burning that particular image into his mind. He took a deep breath and then laid his wife's wand down into the box as well. "Protect her in the next life as I have failed in this one." 3 figures then apparated into the clearing. Harry, Neville, and Tonks walked slowly over to the newly made tombstone and faltered a few steps away. "Mr. Lovegood, I'm sorry about Luna." Harry wrung his hands uncomfortably as Mr. Lovegood turned around to greet them with a somber nod. "Life is unpredictable," he replied, suddenly. "Guilt and blame only hinders us while it gives fuel to our enemies. We all know the real culprit here, and child, it is not you." With tears searing down his cheeks, Neville meekly walked over and placed a sealed envelope into the wooden box. His budding affection for the eccentric Ravenclaw would now be buried among her precious belongings. Mr. Lovegood lowered the box into the small pit and Harry and Neville helped with the burial. "Harry, we have to hurry, it's risky you just being here," Tonks said quickly with an apologetic glance at the grieving father. The two boys said their silent goodbyes to their friend and bade Mr. Lovegood farewell before the three hastily apparated away. Xenophilia stayed glued in front of the tombstone for a long time after, as he prayed that his daughter find love and happiness in her next adventure. Then flashback. Harry woke with a jolt. He lifted his head off the ground slowly, trying to ignore the pounding in his ears. His body protested the movement and he could feel painful bruises where he had apparently fallen. He looked up and stared incredulously at the canopy of leaves overhead. Trees the size of skyscrapers filled the entire area with roots resembling bodies of a full-grown basilisk protruding out of the ground. Birds fluttered by, diving in and out of the tree branches, and the sounds of large animals rustled through the forest. The forest was massive and unfamiliar, and he had a strong inkling he was not in England any longer. This new and foreign terrain was intimidating, especially because he had no idea where he was or, more importantly, how to get somewhere safe. "Stupid fate's trying to meddle in my life again," he grumbled under his breath as he remembered the hazy conversation he had right before waking up. The whistling in the wind sounded almost like chuckling, and he had a strong desire to curse them even more. Barry then paused. Humming to the realization that this might actually be real and not just some hallucination his mind made up, his body suddenly froze in panic. "After I died, I was supposed to see my family and friends," he thought with despair. During the war, his only consolation was that when he died, he would finally see his loved ones again. Hearing Ron and Hermione bicker over inconsequential things would be music to his ears right about now. The forest sounds mocked him as he thought of his two best friends. Anger flooded his senses. He had made plans for the afterlife. And now the fates had messed it all up. He would have finally been able to hug his parents and tell them how much he loved them. After missing their presence his entire life, all he wanted was to make up that time and get to know them firsthand. Tears started to trickle down his face. He also would have been able to talk to Severus again, tell him how grateful he was for everything the potions master did for the cause, and especially for him. He'd also finally get him to stop being stubborn and reconcile with his father. There were so many people, countless numbers who followed him in the war, who had died because they believed in him. And he never was able to thank them or tell them how sorry he was for leading them to their deaths. His guilt welled up, as it had many times over the last couple of years, but he squashed it down fervently. Barry took a deep breath and wiped the tears from his cheeks. For now he needed to focus on his present situation. He would mourn the loss of what could have been after he figured out where the hell he'd fallen. He tried to pick himself up slowly, but found himself tripping on his own clothing. He faltered, wondering how that was possible. When he looked down at the article in question, he saw his black cloak trailing far beyond where his body ended. He held his hands to his face now, noticing how very small they looked in comparison to what he remembered. Frantically, Harry patted at his face, his fingers searching for anything out of place, but was unable to determine anything wrong except smaller features. How is this possible? His eyes glazed over as he tried to recall his last memory. One single sentence echoed in his mind as if spoken again right in front of him: "There will also be a small side effect from traveling to a different dimension while still alive. You'll find it out soon enough." The side effect of shrinking. Harry fumed. No one would take him seriously if his body was the size of a little kid. He then noticed that he no longer had his glasses on. He blinked slowly, glancing at his surroundings, taking in all the crystal clear details and vivid green colors of the leaves. "Well, I guess one good thing about this is it seems I will no longer need my glasses." He tried his best to fix the cloak to fit his new small form. He tied the ends rather hastily around his waist, ending with something that looked more like a toga than a cloak. It was the best he could do with the situation at hand. So after looking around at the trees around him, Harry grimly set out, not fully aware of what it was he was looking for and dearly wishing for some pants. "If I meet anyone, they are going to laugh their heads off when they see me wrapped up in a toga. How humiliating." Harry fought his weariness as he trudged through the endless forest where he had awoken. The forest reminded him of the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts, with the towering trees and odd animal noises in the background. He shuddered as he thought about his experiences there, with one very detailed memory of giant flesh-eating acromantulas chasing him and Ron through the forest. "If I come across an army of acromantula again, I don't know if I would be able to handle that." He sighed at the difficult situation he had been placed in. Yet again, he is forced into an unknown situation with no clue as to what he's supposed to do. Except this time he didn't have Ron and Hermione by his side. He felt a sharp pain in his chest as he thought of his best friends. "Come on, Harry, focus." He checked his magical core, trying to see if it had been affected by the transportation to wherever he was. It felt fine, just a little weak, and he gave a sigh of relief. "I might have enough magic for my animagus form." He stopped walking for a moment to carefully consider the risks. He didn't want there to be complications with his animagus form and his newly shortened body. His mind drifted to the lessons Remus had taught him about animagi. The animal was affected by the person's height, weight, age, and many other factors. Since he didn't know any of those answers for his new body, his animagus form could possibly be dangerous for him to attempt. So instead, he chose a random direction and started walking again, hoping to find something soon. During the war, they frequently had to camp in forests, so he knew to look for a shelter of some kind, preferably an unoccupied cave. "Let's hope I'll get lucky and find a place quickly," he thought. Though he never seemed to be very lucky. After wandering over half a day with no indication of being closer to finding his way out of the forest or discovering any type of shelter at all, Harry sat down, leaning his small frame against a large tree. His body, aching and sore, couldn't take much more of this random roaming through the forest, especially with no destination in sight. His throat was parched and his stomach growled angrily at him. The only solace in this situation was that he had not encountered any strange beast so far in the forest. He shook his head with resolve. He'd have to risk his animagus form. His form would enhance his visual and olfactory senses, so he'd have a much higher chance of finding clues of which direction to travel. Risking a few complications was worth it if the alternative was staying lost in this immense forest and becoming food for a hungry animal. He shifted and immediately felt comforted by the familiar form. He had named his form Mooney for his old friend Remus, who helped him achieve the form shortly before he died. He could feel the slight differences in this form and his old one. He glanced down to study his smaller paws. At least I'll be able to hide easier as a younger wolf. His animagus form had strong instincts and at the beginning fought Harry for dominance. He and Mooney had come to a compromise though, and Harry, while he stayed in complete control of the form, was heavily influenced by the natural instincts and thoughts from the wolf. After he shifted, Harry was accosted with a multitude of unfamiliar scents. Where the hell am I? He wondered, trying to sift through the new scents. Mooney wanted to go investigate all the new and interesting smells, but Harry needed to find someone to help him get out of this forest. Toward the east, his nose detected a waft of cooked meat, cloth, and smoke. There was a human nearby. He treaded softly toward what he now knew was a campsite. He sniffed again and noticed two distinct human scents. He crept up slowly, trying to get close enough to tell whether these humans were friendly or not, without being seen. His instincts from the war automatically made him hesitate to approach. This isn't a war anymore, Harry, he tried to convince himself. It was a hard concept for him to fathom. As he wavered a few yards from the campsite, a flash of movement caught his attention in the trees, and he saw a glint of metal. He lowered himself, unconsciously growling at the unwelcome danger. It's only a wolf here, no missing nin for us to battle for now, my rival. The owner of the voice jumped down from the tree and gave Harry a grin. He was wearing a green jumpsuit and had thick black eyebrows the size of large caterpillars. Sorry little wolf, no food for you over here. The other human then appeared from behind a tree. His gravity-defying white hair looked normal compared to the unusual clothing they were both wearing. This second one even had a face mask. What kind of a place has people who dress like this? Harry wondered, trying to picture somewhere that would deem outlandish clothing like this to be acceptable. He recognized a few of the sounds the humans were making from the information the fates had given him before this impossible journey, but Harry couldn't understand what the words meant. It only confirmed Harry's suspicion that he was very, very far from home. He tried to focus on the sounds, but it was still too early for any of the given knowledge to be helpful in this situation. The white-haired human lazily strode over to where Harry was still cowering defensively. He's just a baby, he said, leaning towards Harry to get a better look. Looks pretty hungry to me as well. Harry bared his teeth, trying to decide whether these two were a threat to him or not. The masked human laughed and, in the blink of an eye, swept Harry up into his arms. Harry squirmed and tried to bite the human who dared to pick him up. Don't worry little wolf, I have food for you. You need it. Oh. I had forgotten. You have a soft spot for wolves, don't you? The green one stated cheerfully to the one in the mask. Harry stared at the piece of meat placed in front of him. Both of the humans left him alone other than small glances they shot his way every now and again. He sniffed the meat and the delicious scent made the decision for him. He took a small bite with as much self-control as he could manage. It was rabbit, but the flavoring was a little different compared to the rabbits he'd eaten in the past. Not wanting to think any more confusing questions when he had no one to answer them, Harry focused his attention to the meat and ate greedily. After finishing the meal the humans had provided, Harry took the time to study them sitting around the fire. The white-haired man was staring lazily back. Harry believed his companion had called him rival, and the other he had heard referred to as guy. Suddenly, and without being quite sure what had just happened, Harry found himself held down with a blade at his throat. I know you aren't a real wolf, so who are you, and how are you able to hold that form so convincingly? The white-haired man said with a pleasant tone, but his body language screamed a threat. Harry shuddered at cool metal pressed against his skin and slowly released his animagus form. A child. How is a child able to do that? By his youthfulness, I would guess he isn't any older than 4, Guy stated, his caterpillar-like eyebrows disappearing beneath his bowl-cut fringe. Harry, back in his tied-back overly large black cloak, tried to explain that he was lost, but the only words coming out were in English. It was clear by the expressions on the two men's faces that they didn't understand any of it. How did he know I wasn't a wolf? Harry wondered, gazing at the sharp weapon fearfully. And how am I supposed to explain my situation when I can't even explain myself? He swallowed hard, anxiously wondering if the fates had given him a second chance, only to have him killed within hours of his reawakening. Harry had never thought much of forests, anyway. Poor Luna. And now Harry has officially met Kakashi and Guy. Chapter 3 The Hidden Leaf Village. I glanced at Kakashi with surprise. You're indeed worthy to be my rival, Kakashi. How's it you knew he was human? His scent, Kakashi replied easily. No further explanation was given. The kid's chakra levels are relatively high, but that does not explain how he is able to achieve such a youthful transformation. Maybe it's some type of bloodline limit. Kakashi just hummed, still gazing at the boy with one expressionless eye, as Guy unrelentingly rambled off different explanations of the child's strange wolf form and what might be the cause of it. Kakashi still held the kunai against the boy's neck, but he noted that from his expression, the boy acted like he'd never seen a kunai before. He also looks to be lost, Guy stated thoughtfully. Despite his youth, he is only skin and bones. Looks like he hasn't had a bite to eat in days. I wish to feed him more so his youthfulness can grow. My rival, I think we should take him with us. Do you think, Kakashi stated slowly, that this boy could possibly be what the Hokage sent us out here for? Ah, that is possible. He does fit the abnormal guidelines set for our mission. Kakashi nodded and pulled his kunai away, though still holding it ready in his hand. It's decided then. We'll take the child with us to the Hokage. If we are wrong, the Hokage can figure out what to do with him. Yes. My thoughts exactly. You make one wrong move, Kakashi said, leaning right into the boy's face, and this will not end well for you. Though he could not understand the words, Harry did glean enough from their tones and actions to know he was being led somewhere and he shouldn't try anything funny or there would be consequences. They packed up their campsite at an incredible speed and gestured Harry to walk alongside them. While their bodies seemed relaxed, Harry noticed the tense shoulders and the slight head movement scouring the road. They act like soldiers, Harry realized. They look to be only a few years older than myself, but who knows how long they've been in service. He peered up at the two once more, staring at them in a different light. Though I don't know what kind of military has soldiers who dress so strangely. Again, where the hell am I? It was about 30 minutes of Harry walking between the two soldiers on a road until he saw a very large wall in their path. He figured that was their intended destination, since the wall was the first structure he'd seen since waking up. The soldiers were discussing something in their language about his shape-shifting abilities. Harry was slowly starting to understand the words and put them into sentences, although speaking was a different action entirely. Instead of dwelling too much on this, he just focused on being able to understand the soldiers' conversation a little more clearly. At least this would help him figure out what he needed to do to survive in this new world. When they came closer to the wall, Harry saw large gates with people bustling around inside them. It looked like some type of town, a medieval-looking one at that. When they came to the outside of the gate into the town, two men also wearing strange outfits were sitting lazily at a booth and called them over. One of them had spiky black hair and dark eyes and a bandage resting on the bridge of his nose. The other one had straight brown hair that tumbled down to entirely cover his right eye. They both looked at Harry with confusion. So, who's the kid? The first one with a bandage across his face asked the green-clad man. Pretty sure you didn't leave with one a few weeks ago. The bandaged man grinned. We found this youthful one in the forest, the green man stated, gesturing toward Harry. He has a wonderful bloodline we want to show the Hokage. Harry was sure his name was Guy, given how often the silver-haired one called him that. He had initially thought the other man was called Kakashi, but Guy referred to him as rival more than anything else, so he wasn't quite sure which one was his name. The two men stared at him expectantly, but Kakashi rival interrupted. We are in a bit of a hurry, so we'll be off, he said, with a wave and an eye smile. He motioned to Harry and Guy to continue and followed behind them toward the gate. Alright, we will see you around, Kakashi, Guy. Harry wanted to ask what a Hokage was, but still couldn't figure out how to say it. It was getting increasingly more frustrating not being able to talk and only able to understand what the two soldiers were saying. Especially when the silver-white-haired one stated that if he had longer hair, he could be confused with a cute little girl. Harry fumed at that comment, and it took every ounce of strength not to start cursing back at the man. He was 19 for Merlin's sake. These emotional outbursts felt strange to Harry, as this younger body's urge to whine and complain seemed foreign to his 19-year-old mind. He pondered this strange and horrifying realization that he indeed was going to be starting over as a child, with childlike impulses. Well kid, welcome to the Hidden Leaf Village, Kakashi said, peering over at Harry with his one eye. Harry just nodded. He still couldn't tell if this man meant to hurt or help him, so he figured staying timid for now would be beneficial. Kakashi stared at Harry thoughtfully. I guess you do understand what we are saying then. That's good to know. Harry looked up and nodded once again. He wasn't sure what was in store for him next, but at least he could answer yes or no. This would have to do until he was able to figure out how to speak this strange language. And for what seemed to be the 100th time this day, he cursed the fates for making this next great adventure so difficult for him. This kid is an enigma, Kakashi thought as he stared down at the young boy walking dutifully next to him. Large chakra reserves like this and unknown abilities usually scream foreign ninja or spy. I figured he was just an older shinobi with the ability to transform into a child just as he transformed into a wolf, but now. He stared down at the child once again, his trained eye catching the rapid breathing and small shivers from the young boy. He either is a brilliant actor or he's really just a lost child. One with a very unique bloodline limit. He then pulled out his beloved orange novel and began to read, despite Guy's protests of reading that smut in front of the child. Best to just let the Hokage deal with this one. The three walked through the place called the Hidden Leaf Village in silence, which was just fine for Harry. He was too lost in his thoughts about what this meeting with the Hokage, whoever he was, would mean for Harry. What if they decided it was better to just kill him and be done with it? Then another horrible thought occurred to him. What if I died and I'm actually in another dimension like the Fates talked about? Would this new world has its own heaven? If so, I won't ever be able to see my old friends and family ever again, just strangers from this world. Harry's eyes filled with tears and he tried his hardest to control the emotions waiting to explode. He sniffed involuntarily, drawing the gazes of the two soldiers. Guy gave Harry a sympathetic smile and patted his head rather hard. It'll be okay, my young friend. The Hokage is a very wise man. He will see the youthfulness you possess and know just what to do with you. This comment didn't calm Harry's nerves, rather the opposite. Harry didn't like that one man was the deciding factor on what will happen to him. In no time at all, they had arrived to a huge building in the center of town. This is the Hokage's tower. Guy said enthusiastically for Harry's benefit. Harry hesitated at the door, uncertain about the events that would unfold after he entered. "Come on," the white-haired soldier ordered casually, giving him a slight push through the doorway, time to see the Hokage. Harry took a large breath before slowly walking through the doorway, though he wasn't able to stop his hands shaking from nerves. Huge windows, capturing the magnificence of the entire village outside, lit up a circular room he had just entered. A small mahogany desk sat in the middle of the room, littered with stacks of paper haphazardly lying about. Old dusty books piled to the ceiling hid most of the walls from sight. A small elderly man sat behind the desk with a large pipe in hand. His puffs of smoke expertly circled his head like a halo before dissipating into the rising air. It seemed like this was a common pastime for the old man. He was currently busy staring into an antique crystal ball, watching a 7-year-old with bright yellow hair playing pranks on unsuspecting people. He looked up as the two soldiers and Harry came into the room and grudgingly put the crystal ball away. The elderly man's features resembled his old headmaster so much that for a second Harry was back at Hogwarts, walking into Dumbledore's study once again. Thinking of Dumbledore made Harry's heart hurt. He missed the quirky old man and his half-moon spectacles, strange wardrobe choices and all. Harry's eyes fluttered shut as Dumbledore's death flashed before his eyes without warning. A few members of the Order were engaged in an intense and lengthy battle after a small raid had turned into an ambush. Finding out that a traitor was amongst the Order was difficult, but no one had time to dwell on the fact while being attacked from all sides by Death Eaters. Harry, Kingsley, Bill Weasley, Hannah Abbott and Hermione were all a part of this group and no one was equipped or ready to handle the large number of attackers. Dumbledore appeared soon after the ambush began, though how he knew they were in trouble was another mystery. The brief moment of cheer that they may get out of this alive turned bleak as the Order members realized Voldemort had arrived. Dumbledore, in all his glory, took it upon himself to distract the Dark Lord as the rest of the group tried to find a way to escape. "Harry, run!" Dumbledore exclaimed as Voldemort entered into the fight. He stood proudly in front of Harry, blocking him from view. Harry, clutching his bleeding right arm, stood frozen as he gazed into the red eyes of his parents' murderer. Well, Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore. The two people I've been waiting most eagerly to see," Voldemort said smoothly, a malicious smile gracing his face. "I have to thank our new member for this happy reunion." The Death Eaters laughed darkly, still fighting viciously against the other Order members. One face in particular stood out. Terry Boot, the traitor from Ravenclaw, had a manic grin as he stood smugly behind the Dark Lord. "We will all find out how you chose the wrong side. I'm glad I was clever enough to figure it out before it was too late." "Mr. Boot," Dumbledore said sadly. "How blind one can be when faced with troubled times." "Troubled times, Dumbledore?" Voldemort sneered. "It's more than just troubled when you are about to die." Dumbledore raised his wand just in time to conjure up a shield against the first spell. "Kingsley, get Harry out of here," Dumbledore ordered, summoning an immense golden shield to block the group from the number of attacks by Voldemort and his followers. The few Order members stood inside the Golden Dome and watched Dumbledore helplessly as he continued his fight with Voldemort. "Bill, disable the anti-apparition wards," Kingsley barked and the eldest Weasley began muttering quickly with his wand in the air. "Break down that barrier." Voldemort screamed, and the Death Eaters began firing spell after spell against the shield to no avail. Harry struggled against Hermione's tight embrace to try and find a way to help the headmaster in his fight. "There will be other opportunities for you to fight, Harry," Hermione said as calmly as possible. "Getting the wounded to safety and living to fight another day is our priority right now. You do realize you are hurt, don't you? And Hannah doesn't have much time left." The blonde Hufflepuff was grasping her red-stained torso weakly in the arms of Kingsley. Harry understood this, but watching Dumbledore struggle to hold the shield and keep up with Voldemort's brutal attacks was painful. It was clear the old wizard was wearing down. Dumbledore was on another level, but how long could anyone last against this? "Got it!" Bill exclaimed, just as the shield dissipated. A yell of triumph from the Death Eaters was silenced as Dumbledore used the rest of his magic to raise a barrier around the Death Eaters and Voldemort so they would have time to escape. The only shortcoming was Dumbledore was inside that barrier and completely open to attack. But the hauntingly joyful cry, Voldemort cast his final curse, and as Harry was side-apparated out by Hermione, his vision filled with a familiar blast of green light. Harry's eyes prickled as they were filled with tears. He wiped them away with his forearm hastily. The situation before him was more important at the moment than rehashing bad memories. "So, who is this young one?" the elderly man asked pleasantly. Harry, now understanding the language relatively well, answered quickly, "Harry, my name is Harry." The old man's forehead furrowed and he frowned deeply, glancing between the two men who'd escorted Harry. "Damn," Harry thought, seeing the reaction, "I said that in English again, didn't I?" "Okajama, we found this boy, though he was in the form of a wolf puppet first, in the forest we have been scouting the past 3 weeks. We brought him here to see what you wanted to do with him," Kakashi replied lazily after Harry's failed attempt at speaking up for himself. All three of them stared at Harry, making him increasingly uncomfortable. He realized he was sweating rather excessively under his thick toga cloak. "Okay Harry, you can do this," he thought with determination. "I just have to be able to say enough so they know I'm not a threat and then all of this confusion will be over." "Harry," he said slowly, pointing at himself. "I'm Harry." The old man stared at him with piercing blue eyes. "So, your name is Hari, little one?" Harry nodded quickly. "Well, Hari, I see that you can understand us relatively well. Are you able to speak our language though?" Harry scrunched up his face in concentration. "Trying," he said, and to his relief, it came out in their language. He looked up and smiled at the old man, who looked at him with amusement. Well Hari, what were you doing deep in the forest?" "I got sent here by interfering fates and have no idea where this is or what I'm supposed to do." Harry whined and cursed himself for saying it again in English. He closed his eyes. "Okay, try something simpler." "Lost," Harry stated. "I guess I really will seem like a child if the only way I can speak their language is in one-word sentences." He grumbled at the thought. "Lost, you say?" The Hokage trailed off. "Okage-sama, if I may make a suggestion?" Kakashi asked, stepping up to the desk. The Hokage gestured for him to continue. "Maybe Yamanaka-sen would be able to get some answers from him. We can't be sure if he is faking having this language barrier or not." "Kakashi, you want to send a 4-year-old to T&I?" Guy exclaimed. His youthful mind could be destroyed. The Yamanaka technique is the most ruthless mind interrogation Konoha has. Harry did not like how the conversation was going at all. "Yamanaka-sen is out on a mission right now," the Hokage responded. "Hibiki-sen then?" Kakashi said, though his hesitance for the suggestion was made clear. "He is even worse," Guy argued. "There are rumors of Hibiki's interrogations that even give me nightmares." "What about his subordinate, Anko-san?" Harry noticed the white-haired soldier and the old man both shivered. "You want sadistic Anko to interrogate him?" Kakashi mused. "Anko, has not found her ability to use restraint in her interrogations yet," the Hokage confessed. "But Hibiki-san, really?" This Hibiki character sounded more like a Death Eater than a soldier. Definitely someone he would have tried to avoid if possible. "I have the worst luck in the world it seems. How do these soldiers even interrogate? They most likely don't have things like Veritaserum, so do they use knives and such to torture their victims for answers?" The Hokage rubbed his chin and thought. "Even though I do not see this child being some sort of spy, it might be best to see if Hibiki is able to get some answers out of him. There are so many questions to have answered." A look of horror shot across Harry's face. The Hokage saw it and smiled at him. "Do not worry, child. I will not let him harm you. Unless, of course, you are a spy, then I'm afraid it's a different story. Kakashi, please escort Hari to the T&I building." Kakashi bowed, grabbed Harry, and jumped out the window, with Harry's foreign protests heard all the way out. I would like you to go and talk to Hibiki personally before he sees Hari. I want you to explain the situation and let him know that this child isn't a suspect yet. We would just like to know who he is for now and where he has come from. I'm very interested in finding some answers as well. Hi, Hokage-sama, Guy responded and then bowed before heading out the door. The Hokage sat back in his chair thoughtfully, his smoking pipe all but forgotten after the mystery of the young new arrival. Transforming into a wolf pup, eh? What a curious boy. It seems the prophecy I heard is coming true. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. I need to contact Jiraiya as soon as possible. If he is indeed a part of that prophecy, I'm going to need assistance. Hopefully this boy will accept joining our village. It'll be interesting to see what kind of abilities he possesses. End chapter 3. Chapter 4 Ibiki. Kakashi landed in front of a building that in Harry's opinion was more of a prison than anything else, towering thick grey walls with barred windows and a heavy door that screamed once you come in, you never come out. Harry had never been tortured before. He always knew it was a viable possibility during the war. He never thought he'd encounter this as a possibility just because of his existence though. He obviously wasn't a spy, but what if they didn't believe him? What if this man was just sadistic and didn't care whether Harry was innocent or not? Without a wand, he felt extremely vulnerable in such an unknown situation. What was his story supposed to be? He had no idea about this world, but if they found an animagus transformation odd, then it seemed magic did not exist here. Should he tell the truth and be marked as insane, or lie and possibly get caught and then tortured for lying? As they entered, the white-haired soldier led Harry silently down a long hallway. Harry involuntarily started shivering, thought it wasn't from the cold musty air that filled the building. Kakashi peered down at the shivering form and felt a small pang of guilt. He laid his hand awkwardly on the boy's shoulder and gave it a small squeeze. Harry peeked up at him with wide eyes in response. Ibiki is pretty intimidating, but if you aren't a spy, there is nothing to worry about. The boy didn't seem reassured by his words. Kakashi sighed. He wasn't any good at comforting people, especially children. He had zero practice with kids and avoided passing a genin team mostly for that reason. He guessed it might have been because he graduated so young and didn't have a typical childhood. Where are his parents anyways? Kakashi thought. Shouldn't they be worried about him? He shook his head, clearing that line of thought. Kakashi brought him to a room empty of everything but two small chairs. Harry sank into one of the chairs and pulled his knees to his chest. Kakashi, instead of sitting in the remaining seat, leaned against the doorway studying the boy. Seeing the frail-looking kid hug his knees to his chest reminded him of himself after his father died, scared and all alone. He stopped himself of thinking any further about it. It wasn't his problem. He did what was asked of him and brought in a suspicious person from the woods. He glanced once more at the boy before exiting the room. If he makes it through Ibiki, then I'll make Guy buy him dango as an apology. Guy appeared in Ibiki's office just as Kakashi walked into the building with the young boy. Ibiki was instructing his subordinate, a Takebetsu jonin named Anko, to finish all the paperwork he had put aside for too long. Yosh. Hokage-sama wishes for you to speak to a youthful boy my rival and I found in the forest. A language barrier hides his youthfulness. Please lend your help. Guy grinned widely and added, I know you can do it, my spirited friend. Ibiki stared at him blankly for a moment before turning back to his subordinate. I'll be in the interrogation rooms if you need me. He stepped past Guy and out of the room, the other shinobi falling in step with him. Is the kid already here? Guy nodded in the affirmative, yes, my rival was charged with bringing him here directly. Ibiki pursed his lips, if the boy was with Kakashi he could be anywhere in the village. So, why does the Hokage want me to question a kid? Young Hari has already shown to us his shining spirit of willful youth. He is able to shape-shift into a wolf pup, which is the glorious form he wore when we first came upon him in the forest. Ibiki was only slightly impressed with this information. But if the Hokage wanted him to question the kid, there must be something special about him and not just a shifting ability. I frowned, expression suddenly serious as he eyed his comrade. Ibiki-san, the child seems scared and all alone. Please, don't be too hard on him. Ibiki stared unblinkingly at the boy. Even though this was how he usually started interrogations, he was not staring to freak the kid out. He was merely studying him. Well, he looks about 5 but extremely malnourished. Doesn't seem to have had a decent meal in weeks. There are faint scars along his body, a rather deep one on his left forearm, and a strange mark like lightning on his forehead. Might have been abused or tortured for a great length of time. His clothing does not seem local at all. In fact, I have never seen fabric such as that before. What caught Ibiki's attention next were the boy's eyes. They are a striking green color, but they look very peculiar on his young body. Those eyes hold pain, suffering, and loneliness, eyes that I see mainly on shinobi veterans or rescue torture victims. This boy looks like he has lived through many years of war and death, which is what I find to be very strange for one so young. No, his eyes are much more interesting than any shape-shifting abilities. It seems torture is the most reasonable explanation for this boy's state. If he passes this, like I believe the Hokage knows he will, I will highly recommend this boy for therapy. Harry tried to maintain eye contact with the man, but was finding it very difficult. He felt to see if his occlumency shields were still erect. Something about this man reminded him of Snape, and while Snape had been a good man, he had still been a right bastard most of the time. He hid a wince as he struggled to sense any type of barrier into his mind. Hoping this man didn't know any type of legitimacy, Harry started twiddling with his thumbs waiting for the man to start talking. "So, Hari is it?" Harry nodded, looking up once again. "My name is Ibiki, and I am the head interrogator for Konoha. I should warn you that I can tell when someone is lying to me, so it would be best if you refrain from trying. I am a master in torture, but I would rather not have to resort to that." The man gave Harry a very Snape-like smirk. Feeling extremely nervous, he nodded again. "Wonderful. So, Hari, where did you come from?" Harry inwardly cringed. First question, and already he didn't know how to answer. "Okay, just keep it short and vague, and it will be almost like the truth without looking like an insane person." "Our way," Harry said simply. "Home gone." Harry almost winced at how weak and childish he sounded. Keeping to simple answers and having the voice of a child was really starting to irritate him. "Your home was destroyed then?" Another nod. "Alright. What about your family?" "Parents dead," Harry replied. Kakashi, listening through a one-way glass with Guy and the Hokage, was surprised at the lack of emotion the boy had when talking about his deceased family. He glanced over at the Hokage, who looked troubled at the revelation. "Are you a spy?" "No." "Are you working with anyone else who is a spy or from another village?" "No." Ibiki glanced at the window on the side of the room and gave a small nod, indicating it was the truth. The Hokage, sitting behind the one-way glass, sighed with relief and smiled. He turned to Kakashi and Guy and said, "As I suspected. Now we will have to figure out what to do with him." Kakashi silently agreed but kept his gaze on the boy. "The Hokage will have to be careful with this one." Ibiki continued the questioning. "And how old are you?" "Don't know." This was the first answer that really shocked Ibiki. There was no lie in the kid's statement. How can a boy not know his own age? Harry was getting frustrated. He was able to keep it simple so far, but he didn't even know his age for Merlin's sake. He was technically 19, but he had no idea what age his new body was. Ibiki was slowly losing his scare factor, as Harry was now just frustrated and ready for this to be over and done with. "Are you alone?" "Yes." "Are you a shapeshifter?" "No. Just wolf." "So he couldn't shift, eh?" Ibiki glanced at the one-way mirror. This boy. He was very interesting. Just not in the way the Hokage had expected. Harry was a riddle, one that Ibiki wanted very much to figure out. One after another, he fired questions away and received short broad answers that only led to more fascinating questions. "So Hari, how did you end up in the forest?" Harry sighed. He had been in this room with this Ibiki man for about 10 minutes, trying his best to answer truthfully without sounding mentally unbalanced. He thought for a second, and a good, albeit only slightly truthful, answer came to mind. "Searching for sister," Harry said, hoping this man believed him. The fates did say he had a sister, so he does need to find her at some point. Too bad he had no idea who she was or where she might be. "So, you think she came to this village? What is her name? How old is she? Is she a ninja?" "A ninja?" Harry looked at the man with widened eyes. Is that what these people were? Ninja. Harry remembered his cousin Dudley watching a television show with people all dressed in black, fighting with long swords. Dudley called it the True Ninja, though Harry wasn't sure if it was the title or just a character's nickname. Harry wasn't allowed to sit and watch it with him, but he used to hover in the background to catch a few minutes of the show. The show had inspired Dudley and his gang to dress in black and run around the backyard with sticks and their pockets filled with small rocks, fighting and hitting each other. They only stopped when one episode showed the ninja jumping through trees, and Dudley tried to reenact it. Breaking your arm can cause you to become very disenchanted with a series apparently. These people were the sword-fighting, tree-leaping ninjas he had found so interesting back then. Ibiki saw the child's confusion, but couldn't fathom what it was from. Well? Harry jumped out of his realization, remembering he was supposed to be answering the question. He could dwell on the consequences of being in a world of ninja if he ever made it out of this interrogation. Don't know. Ibiki, getting fed up with all the don't know answers, was about to start in on the boy when they were suddenly interrupted. Ibiki-san, I can't figure out what you want me to do about the incident in Iowa. Should I? Anko looked up from the papers she was holding and realized she had interrupted Ibiki's questioning. Ibiki refrained from rolling his eyes. After glaring at the boy to stay put, he stood up to snatch the papers out of Anko's hand. As Ibiki read through the report, Harry took the time to study the young lady that had come in. She was wild-looking, with spiky black hair and a wicked grin. He noticed she had on the same jacket that both Kakashi and Guy wore. She must be a ninja too then. He was about to look away when he saw a head poke out of her jacket's sleeve. A black snake's head. Shocked, Harry continued to stare at the snake as he heard him start speaking to his handler. "Mistress, the boy over there smells funny." Anko tore her eyes away from the report, then glanced at Harry. She grinned. "Oh, smells funny how?" Ibiki looked up at Anko in confusion, but then saw her attention was directed at the small snake protruding out of her clothing. "He smells of places far away. Places I have never been." Well, that was strange. Anko had been all around the continents with her familiar Habu, so hearing this boy was from somewhere new was surprising. "And Habu says this boy is from a place he has never been before," Anko announced to Ibiki. "That is strange, because Habu has been to all the continents." Harry, being able to understand everything the snake was saying, paled at the statement. He wasn't sure what would come of the insinuation, but he didn't think any of it would be good. He then realized, cracking the first smile since he'd been brought into this village, he had just found a way to speak without struggling with the new language. It's not very nice to tell people they smell funny. Everyone in the room and behind the one-way glass stared at Harry, as if he had grown two heads. "A speaker? I never thought I'd meet a true speaker such as you. I will have to tell my kin that a brother without scales has appeared." The snake excitedly left his mistress's flak jacket and slithered over to the young boy. He climbed up Harry's leg and came face to face with him. He tasted Harry's skin and squirmed. "You even taste different," the snake admitted and hissed in laughter. "Anko, can you understand him?" Ibiki asked slowly, still wrapping his head around the new development. "Yeah, I can." "Ibiki, who is this kid? I've never even heard of a person being able to actually speak like a snake." "It's called parselting in my language," Harry said to the girl Anko. "It's kind of rare, but I was born with this ability to speak with snakes." Huh. So the kid was born hissing at snakes. "You found yourself a unique kid, Ibiki. Anko, I need you to stay and translate for me. This will be much faster than the short one or two worded answers the boy has given me so far. Is that okay with you, boy?" Harry nodded as Anko settled herself against the back wall and Ibiki sat back down to continue the questioning. "So, we were talking about your sister. Why don't you know anything about her?" Harry hesitated before responding. "My memory is messed up. I don't know anything about my sister, only that I have one and she is supposed to be coming soon. I don't know when or where she will be. That's why I need to find her." "Phew," Harry thought as Anko relayed his answer. Still truthful without sounding insane. "I'm starting to get good at this." The rest of the questioning went smoothly, as Harry was now able to converse quite efficiently through Anko. "Well, that was certainly enlightening," said the Hokage, sitting back in his chair stretching as the questioning came to an end. "We have learned that the only family he has left is his sister who is missing, he is from somewhere far away, he can turn into a wolf, and that most all other information we could want he doesn't know because his memory has been compromised." What an interesting boy. Kakashi silently agreed. Yes, the kid was an enigma. One that even people outside of this room would love to figure out. But his role in this was coming to an end. He had important things to get to, like visiting the memorial stone. "Yes, well, let's all return to my office and figure out what to do next." Harry, Kakashi, Guy, Ibiki, and Anko, whose presence there was only because Harry had taken her snake Habu with him, all stood in front of the Hokage's desk. The snake, feeling Harry's nervousness, whispered comforting words into his ear. "Oh Merlin, this is it," Harry thought, his heart sinking into his stomach. "I should never have spoken to the snake. They are going to think I'm a freak because I can speak parselting. No wait, the girl can understand it, and she's okay. Maybe they will like that, but what if they think me being a wolf animagus is bad? What if they think I'm dangerous and kill me? Oh no, what if?" Harry's thoughts are interrupted as the old man began to speak. "Well, my boy, you have definitely made this an exciting day. We would like to help you on your quest to find your sister, of course, but if you said she is searching for you, then I think the best course of action would be for you to stay in one place. Then when she comes, she will be able to find you easily. Now, the question is, would you be opposed to staying here in Konoha?" The Hokage finished and stared at Harry with those twinkling eyes that were so damned familiar that he already knew what his answer would be. "I will stay," Harry said with a smile. He did see the logical reasoning of staying in the village. First, the old man was right about the higher probability of his sister finding him if he stayed in one place. And if the fates dropped him here, then maybe this sister would be dropped off around here as well. Also, he didn't want to keep traveling through forests. Harry wanted to find a place that maybe he could once again call home. Hogwarts was the only place he ever felt was home. If he had to live another life here, he wanted that feeling of belonging once again. "Excellent. Now, since you are so young, I don't think it would be a good idea for you to live on your own. There is an orphanage, Harry quickly paled, but I think the best option would be for you to stay with someone who will be able to take care of you and protect you if need be. The Hokage then looked at Kakashi with knowing eyes, which made the ninja realize what this would be leading to. The Hokage wanted the boy to stay with him. Kakashi could understand the reasoning, of course. He was a seasoned Anbu captain, one that other countries would think twice before confronting. He had no family to support and had quite the fortune piling up, so financially a child would be no problem. He was sure if he said no, he could walk away with this and go back to his life as normal. He didn't want the responsibility of a child. He didn't know anything about raising a kid since he never really was one. But the Hokage was entrusting him with this task, and so it must be important to keep the boy safe. He had suspicions before, but now more than ever he believed the Hokage knew more than he was revealing to the rest of them about the child. It was too much of a coincidence that they were sent to scout those specific woods and this mysterious boy just appears out of nowhere. Could he do it though? Raise this wolf child he just met? He glanced at the boy who was stroking the snake with a worried expression. His eyes trailed back to the Hokage, who gave him another pointed look and raised eyebrows. He could hear Guy enthusiastically rattling off names of potential guardians for the boy but knew what the final outcome would be. Fine. Kakashi tilted his head slightly to show his reluctant agreement. He hoped the Hokage knew what he was doing. The old man looked positively smug. "He can stay with me, Hokage-sama," Kakashi stated, interrupting Guy's continued list of candidates. His offer came to the surprise of everyone in the room but two. Harry's head snapped up at the white-haired ninja with his mouth wide open. Kakashi rubbed his hair, embarrassed and unsure of what to say. "I have a spare bedroom that I don't use. I'll also be able to train him if he wants when I'm not on missions. Also, Genma lives next door and I know I can talk him into checking on, Hari while I'm away." "Kakashi, you are so hip and cool to offer the youthful Hari a home," Guy proclaimed, giving Kakashi a thumbs up with tears streaming down his cheeks. "I will also offer my assistance in helping care for our young charge." The Hokage smothered the victorious smile that threatened to show on his face. Everything was going to plan so far. Kami knows Kakashi could use someone to give his life meaning. The boy needed a guardian, someone who wouldn't abuse the fact that he has unique abilities. And when the time comes and the prophecy comes to light, the boy will need that support more than ever. "Hari, what do you think?" the Hokage asked, peering down at Harry who was still staring up at Kakashi. Harry looked away from Kakashi and nodded slowly. He wasn't sure why this ninja had offered him a place to stay, but he would be careful. He was in a new world filled with ninja and other unknowns, and with that comes new rules. However, this ninja said he would train Harry, and training is exactly what he needed to survive in a place like this. Another small part of him had a faint hope for finally growing up with someone who didn't hate him. He remembered as a child wishing for a relative or just anyone to come and save him from the Dursleys and raise him like any normal kid. The man was a ninja, however, a suspicious one at that. Normal doesn't seem very likely. While he felt confusing childish emotions swirling through his mind, he still was technically an adult, so he really didn't need to be raised by anyone. He forced his thoughts away and focused on the people around him. "But that settled, I suggest, Kakashi, that you take young Hari home and get him settled in. He certainly has had a long day. Tomorrow you need to take him to the hospital for a checkup and then you can show him around his new village. Be sure to stop at the academy so he can see what to expect if he wishes to attend next year." "Yes, Hokage-sama." Kakashi gestured for Harry to follow him and, after Harry had given Habu back to Anko, they left. Guy bowed and tailed behind them as well. "Ibiki, is there anything you wish to add?" the Hokage asked curiously. "The boy has been severely tortured. His sister may have been as well. I recommend therapy at the very least for him. I've seen torture victims go insane from something small triggering a flashback." The Hokage nodded gravely. "And I am also going to continue keeping a close eye on the boy. There is something odd about him. And I intend to find out what that is." Kakashi led Harry out onto the street toward his apartment. He noticed that Harry was getting quite a few odd stares and realized it was because of his clothing. The strange black cloth wrapped around the kid's body was definitely not a normal style around here. "So, Hari, first thing tomorrow we will be going to buy you a whole new wardrobe." Harry, who had detected the weird glances he had been receiving, was awkwardly tugging at his cloak. He blushed and agreed instantly. It wouldn't be prudent for him to strut around with a toga in a ninja village if he could help it. Also, Guy promised to buy you dango. End chapter 4. Chapter 5 Getting to know Hada Kakashi. Harry lay on his new futon, staring at the unusual objects lining the walls of his new room. Strangely shaped weapons, shelves filled with scrolls and bright orange books, and maps with lands and waters Harry didn't recognize, filled the surrounding walls. So this is a ninja's bedroom. His younger self would have loved it. Dudley too, before he broke his arm doing stupid stunts he saw on that ninja show. He had already looked all through the maps on the wall for a name he recognized but had been unsuccessful. He could ask if Kakashi knew of a place called England, but after all he'd learned so far, he seriously doubted it. He'd find some history books later on to read up on this place and discover if this is in fact a new world. He would dwell on this terrifying potential confirmation when he wasn't so exhausted. He thought of his new guardian Hada Kakashi, and Harry still had no idea how he felt about him. His experience told him that everyone had an agenda and he needed to figure out what exactly Kakashi's was. Why would he want to take me in? How could he possibly benefit from this? He yawned and turned over, cuddling against a soft blanket with a stuffed grey wolf under his arm. To his chagrin, his childish tendencies surfaced once again as soon as he walked into Kakashi's extra bedroom. Harry saw the grey wolf inside a box filled with Kakashi's old toys and immediately gravitated toward it. He almost giggled at the ridiculousness of a 19-year-old war hero sleeping with a stuffed animal. Harry was baffled by these inclinations that surfaced, but he decided it wasn't anything too serious to worry about just yet. Kakashi didn't seem to mind that Harry chose one of his old toys, though it was hard for Harry to tell with his face mask hiding most of his expressions. In Harry's opinion, the ninja seemed confused as to what he is supposed to do with a child. Does he not remember when he was this age? Harry wondered. I guess I can't really speak, I only vaguely remember being a child. I just have memories of a lot of yelling and trying to hide frequently. He huddled further into the futon, trying to decide whether to attempt to fall asleep or not. For the past couple of years, sleeping had been very difficult to come by. His nights usually consisted of either waking up to nightly Death Eater raids or a night of fitful dreams that always turned into nightmares. These nightmares would always lead him to being either shaken awake by one of his friends or woken up by his own screams. He was so tired, but he didn't know how Kakashi would react if Harry had a nightmare. Best not to find out then. Silencio, Harry whispered with his arm stretched out, but instead of casting the wandless spell, pain jolted intensely into his hand. What on earth? Harry could still feel the tingling all over his skin, a sensation he'd never felt before. He sat straight up in bed and held his hand out again. Lumos, he said, concentrating on lighting up the palm of his hand. Again, a jolt of pain shot through his arm to the rest of his body. It was then that Harry started to hyperventilate. Oh no, this can't be happening. How will I survive this place if I can't even cast any spells? He tried his other hand with the same spell, tried to summon a small book, levitate his wolf toy in the air, and even change the color of his pillow. His magic was unresponsive and the only effect was the same pain in his hands. He sat on the bed, his hands both pulsing painfully as he stared blankly into the ceiling. He felt his magical core swirling in his abdomen, but nothing he did would bring his magic out. It had taken him months of training after his 19th birthday to perfect his wandless abilities. A fact that had made Professor Snape both proud and bitter, as he was the one who had taught Harry this skill. His wandless magic had saved his life countless times. One memory especially came to mind. He had once been captured and taken to Malfoy Manor and his wand forcefully taken away. Even under the circumstances, he couldn't help but smirk at the memory of Lucius Malfoy's face after Harry blasted the bars of his cell and sent Malfoy flying into a far wall. Since he didn't have a wand here in this place, the only thing he could rely on would be his wandless abilities. If he couldn't even do that anymore. I am totally screwed, he thought anxiously. But Kakashi, he said he would teach me to be a ninja if I wanted. If I learned that, then I could protect myself even without my wandless abilities. His stomach churned at the thought of being so helpless. I might have to think some more about this. He wasn't sure whether he even wanted to be a ninja at all. But I was able to transform into my animagus form. So maybe I just need more practice. He started his breathing exercises, something he learned early on to help calm down impending panic. He breathed in slowly, held it for a second, and let it out, counting to 10 each time. He finally felt most of the panic subside, much to his relief. I'll just have to deal with this in the morning, he whispered to himself before drifting into a fitful sleep. The basement meeting room at number 12 Grimmauld Place blurred and contorted all around him. Empty seats ran along the length of the long table, and Harry felt a painful pull in his chest for the growing number that would never be filled again as the Order of the Phoenix dwindled. Harry, look at this, Hermione called his attention to the map spread out in front of them. Harry looked down at the blurry collection of houses and streets of the small town of Raven's Nest, located just outside London. Voldemort will probably attack from this direction. Ron nodded his agreement from her other side. Harry, we'll send your team here and Charlie will be in the air over here. During the defense, Tonk's team will come out of disguise and fortify our defenses here and here. I'll take my team down the main road, Hermione added, tracing out a path on the map. We should be able to notify the largest number of people and hopefully get them all to safety. "Don't forget, it will be Christmas Eve," a sour, biting voice said behind him, and Harry turned to see Snape, peering over his shoulder suspiciously. His cheeks were more sunken and hollow than in the past, and his gaunt frame weary. "Families will be together in their homes, not about in the main street." Hermione pursed her lips. "I know that, but the road is in the center of town. I'll send half of the group down the east side, and half will take the west, but most of the side streets don't go all the way through the village, so we'll be working off the main road to coordinate." "Work the details out with Seamus and Ernie," Harry said brusquely, pushing his chair back and rising. "We don't have much time. Christmas is only 3 days away, and we need to get Tonk's team out there now." He turned towards the door and the room faded into darkness behind him, and when Harry ducked through the doorway, he found himself on the street. Harry's breath began to quicken. "Wah, Harry." A little girl with bubblegum pink hair and a puggy nose ran down the street in front of him, and he turned to stare after her, eyes slowly rising to the air, which was full of black, shadowy shapes. He stared for several seconds, frozen, dread pooling inside of him and the horrible echoing scream of his mother piercing in his ears. "Tonks!" he shouted as he shook off his daze, looking down the street again for the girl, but she had turned the corner already and was nowhere to be seen. "Harry," a voice said behind him, and Harry turned. His team stood behind him in the street, grim-faced and determined, and Harry managed to still the trembling in his hands and pull out his wand. "First order of business is to drive out those dementors," he stated boldly, raising his own wand and pointing it towards the oncoming horde. "Expecto Patronum." Silvery forms cut across the streets and through the air as patronesses of all shapes and sizes threw themselves at the dementors. Harry and his team advanced through the village streets. Once in a while he caught sight of Charlie or one of his team members flitting through the air above them on broomsticks, glimmering white lights, driving back the massive dementors above. The streets were still, except their own teams and the dementors fleeing before them. Hermione had already been through this part of town and the majority of the residents had been evacuated. But for others, they could hear screaming voices echoing through alleys and streets, and as they advanced further, reclaiming the village, they came across bodies. The villagers they hadn't been in time to save, staring blankly and unmoving, mouths slightly parted, empty of souls. Victims of the Dementor's kiss. Harry tried not to look at them, but their hollow eyes stared back at him all the same, accusing. He was supposed to have saved them. He should have gotten here earlier. The most horrible sight was near the edge of town, where 2 small children lay in each other's arms, vacant expressions on their small, round white faces, eyes turned up towards the skies. He watched, numbly, as one of the newer recruits approached them, trying hopelessly to wake them from their daze, even though Harry knew they never would. Their bodies were still alive, but those children were now nothing but emotionless dolls, a fate worse than death. Harry started, when the younger man started to become almost hysterical in his desperation. He never finished the sentence, because the man dropped dead in front of him, a violent green light hitting him from the side. "Back!" Harry shouted, head jerking and body instinctively slipping into a lower crouch, wand in his hand and eyes searching for their enemies. "Get to cover." They were still apparating, appearing further out in the streets, one after another, spells flying almost the same instant they materialized. Harry sent a spell flying in return, and behind him his team did the same as they retreated further back down the street. The Death Eaters were still appearing, and Harry cursed when he saw groups of them nodding together. "Everyone get out of here. Now." He shouted. He saw one of his team turn on the spot and disappear, even as he moved to do the same, but they were too late. The rest of their attempts at apparition failed. The Death Eaters had managed to erect their anti-apparition wards in time. They were trapped. They fought as they retreated back towards the main road, more of his team falling under curses and spells as they struggled to gain distance and cover on the larger attacking force. People screamed around him, friends, people he cared about and had fought beside before, and there was nothing he could do for them but hope they got out alive. He ran around another corner, bringing up the rear guard on his team, and spun, motioning for his team to run to the next street down, when a black-cloaked figure ran out from a side alley. Harry's wand was on him in an instant, and half a spell out of his mouth before he recognized Seamus Finnegan. "Harry!" the other man called, and Harry quickly dropped his wand and cut off his attack. "Hermione sent me." Harry's eyes widened and he looked around, half expecting to see her standing behind him. "Where is she? Has your team made it out yet?" Shaking his head and taking a moment to catch his breath, Seamus pointed up towards a tall office building back in the direction he'd come from. "They're safe." Hermione wanted to make sure everyone else got out, too. Jets of light burst out of one of the upper windows in the building, aimed down at the street below, and as Harry watched, several red bursts of light struck the side of the building from the street, causing the whole thing to shake. "They have to get out of there," he breathed, staring in apprehension as a growing number of curses struck the building. "She said they would be right behind us," Seamus assured him, passing Harry a worn tennis shoe. He recognized it as one of the porkies they had set up ahead of time. Harry drew his eyes away from the building under siege reluctantly and looked around at the remaining members of his team. They were red-faced and weary, breathing hard and covered in sweat, dirt, and blood from their retreat through the village. Even if there was anything they could do for Hermione, they would never make it past the Death Eaters. They were too exhausted. He would have to trust Hermione to take care of herself. Nodding to Seamus, he held out his own portkey and ordered their retreat. As the last of his team grabbed hold of his and Seamus's portkeys, the familiar sensation of bending space and time hit Harry harder than usual, and the next thing he knew, he was kneeling on the ground, opposite Ron, who was clutching Hermione's body. The woman was limp on the ground and unresponsive, her eyes open but dark and dilated and staring lifelessly. Blood soaked her clothes, matted her hair, and painted red gory streaks down her face from an open wound on the side of her head. Harry couldn't breathe, he could only stare, horror warring with disbelief. Silence hung heavily around him, and it was as if the world had ceased to exist. There was only him, Hermione, and Ron, tears streaming down his face. The wave of sound crashed in around him, and the world sped up again. Ron was sobbing, loud, hysterical cries as he pulled Hermione from the growing puddle of blood underneath her, gathering her unresponsive form in his arms. I'm so sorry the building just collapsed and I'm so sorry." Somewhere behind him, Ernie Macmillan was rambling, his own voice thick with tears and sharp with pain. Harry couldn't look away from Hermione, even when someone started shouting behind him, this time loud and angry, and across from him, Ron surged to his feet, face red and wand drawn. "You bastard." He wasn't sure if it was Ron or Charlie or George or even more than one. "You complete and utter bastard. She's dead, it's your fault, I can't believe you would." He saw the light of the spell, reflecting off the walls around them, and then Ron was screaming again, stumbling back to Hermione's side and practically collapsing on top of Hermione's bloody corpse. "I'm so sorry." Ernie was still apologizing, his voice choking with sobs. And Harry stared, tears slowly gathering in his eyes as he looked at his two best friends, one dead, one broken, both covered in blood and the sounds of their pain shaking around him. Hermione," he managed, a weak scratchy whisper. "Hermione." The second time, it was louder, desperate, because this couldn't be happening. But it was happening, and hadn't it happened before? It was all happening again. His third attempt was less her name and more of an inarticulate scream, desperate and painful, as his body shook and sobs started to bubble up. He joined his best mate in mourning, and that was when he knew that none of them were going to survive this, and it wasn't a game, and even if they did survive, they would wish that they didn't. "Hari. Hari, wake up, it's just a dream." Harry jerked awake and looked at Kakashi warily. His throat felt raw. He'd known not having a silencing charm would lead to problems like this. Now he had Kakashi staring down at him with an unreadable silence, and he didn't know how to explain. "Wait a moment," Kakashi said finally and disappeared. Moments later, Kakashi returned with 2 steaming mugs. He handed Harry a cup of hot tea and sat on the edge of the bed. Harry took a sip of the tea and was surprised he actually liked it. It had a nice vanilla flavor and soothed his throat nicely. "I used to drink this tea after missions when I was younger. I had terrible nightmares and would wake up very similarly to you most nights." Harry stared at him in shock. He never thought the stoic man would open up to him about something so vulnerable. "My sensei would always give me this tea, and we would drink together and talk about it until it wasn't as painful as before," the man explained quietly. "Now, every time I have a bad dream, this is the only tea that calms me down." They sat quietly for a few more minutes, just sipping the tea, before Harry broke the silence. "Thank you," he muttered softly, not knowing what else to say. He was grateful for the tea, but mostly for the fact that Kakashi hadn't started nagging him about what his nightmare was and why he was screaming. Which is exactly what Hermione would have done if she had been here. He shuddered. It was too early to be thinking about Hermione so soon after that dream. Kakashi cleared his throat awkwardly. "Ma, it's no problem. I'm here if you want to talk about it." Kakashi then took the 2 empty cups and silently left Harry's room. Harry glanced at the clock and saw that it was already 4 in the morning. He groaned. There was no way he was going to be able to get back to sleep. He stretched and quietly got out of bed. He pulled on the old clothes Kakashi gave him, a slightly large pair of black shorts and a black t-shirt, to last him until they went shopping later that day. "There's no way I'm going back to sleep, so I might as well do something productive." Kakashi lay in bed wide awake, thinking about the strange boy now under his care. For someone so small, to have such frightening screams, it wasn't natural. He'd seen comrades from the war suffer from terrible night visions and wake up in a similar fashion. Even he himself had gone through nightmares like that. Kakashi heard the light footsteps of his charge in the kitchen. He felt at a loss. He didn't know how to handle a child, much less a child who has obviously suffered greatly. "I just reacted like sensei used to," he thought. His sensei would have been great at caring for a kid, like he should have with Naruto. Kakashi shook his head, trying to stop that line of thought. Instead, he turned his thoughts back to his new charge. What could this boy have possibly gone through to have such horrible nightmares? Kakashi yawned loudly as he threw a kunai at the raging alarm clock next to his bed. He sat up and rubbed his eyes before realizing what he had done to his clock. That is the fourth one this month, he thought with annoyance as he stood up and stretched. I'll need to remember to buy more when we are out shopping today. As he got dressed and headed out of his bedroom, he noticed an appealing smell coming from the kitchen. He peered inside and saw the boy placing food onto 2 plates and laying them on the table. "Come eat," Harry said simply, gesturing for him to sit down. Kakashi wasn't sure what to say so he did as he was told. On the plate were scrambled eggs and toasted bread with jam, which was food Kakashi didn't remember buying. Kakashi stared thoughtfully at him for a moment, reassessing his impression on Harry yet again. So this is what the boy was up to early this morning. Kakashi thanked him and began to eat the first home-cooked meal he'd eaten in weeks. Harry was annoyed. His idea of cooking to get his mind off of the dream was made difficult by the kitchen having almost nothing edible. Most of the food was spoiled rotten and thrown angrily into the garbage. It was a small blessing the bread had not expired. "You need to get groceries." "No, wait, that was English, not much food, need more," Harry muttered, looking down at his own plate. "I sound ridiculous," Harry thought savagely. "When will I be able to finally speak clearly?" "We can go today while we shop," Kakashi finally declared between bites. "I usually don't keep many groceries in the apartment, but since you are staying here as well, I will make an exception." Kakashi crinkled his eye and Harry presumed he was smiling. Harry watched him eat with the ability to still hide his face behind the face mask. Harry wondered briefly what the man hid so expertly behind the mask. Scars seemed a likely reason given his occupation. Harry resisted the urge to touch his own lightning scar. He understood the desire to want to hide them. Studying the chopsticks in Kakashi's hands intently, Harry now saw a new challenge develop in front of his eyes. Harry picked up his chopsticks warily and awkwardly held them. It didn't help that the Dursleys had never taken him to an Asian restaurant, so he had never tried them before in his life. He watched Kakashi closely and tried to copy him but to no avail. He ended up getting frustrated and stabbed the eggs instead. Kakashi didn't comment on Harry's obvious struggle, but noted how strange it was that the child did not know how to use chopsticks. It was just another oddity that Kakashi put in the back of his mind for later evaluation. Harry stared at the stall in horror. While he was living with the Dursleys, he was never taken when his aunt, uncle, and Dudley went to eat fancy dinners. Therefore, sushi and other strange fish and seafood cuisine looked alien to him. People actually eat that stuff? He thought with morbid curiosity. As he stared at the multitude of raw fish and other aquatic selections, it hit him again how very different this place was compared to what he was used to. They picked out enough food to last about a week. Harry chose items he was actually familiar with because he figured he would be providing most of the meals. Kakashi had mentioned earlier how he barely knew anything about cooking unless it was rice or over a campfire. Maybe down the road he would learn how to cook the seafood options, but that would be a challenge for another day. They dropped off their groceries at the apartment and headed to a clothing store nearby. Kakashi helped Harry choose a wardrobe with some casual clothes and also some outfits for training. As Harry tried on clothing options, Kakashi left and bought a bag full of alarm clocks, though Harry had no idea why he needed so many. Harry couldn't figure out the strange sandals some people wore, so he chose some black boots that were more comfortable for him. Harry's training outfit was a short-sleeved black shirt with a green hidden leaf symbol on the front and black pants. Kakashi even joked about getting Harry a face mask to match his if he became a ninja. Harry gulped at the price of the clothing, but when he tried to take some of it back, Kakashi waved him off and paid for it. Okage-sama said he would help pay for your clothing since you didn't have any when you arrived here. So don't worry, it's no trouble, the man assured him. They walked out of the store with 3 bags full of clothes and Kakashi led Harry to a bench outside. Stay here for a second so I can drop these off at the apartment and then we can head to the hospital for your checkup. After, I can show you the academy if you want to see it. Harry nodded in agreement and sat obediently as Kakashi disappeared with a poof and a swirl of leaves. It's a little like apparating, I think, Harry thought. Maybe they have their own variation of apparating, so I will be able to do it even if my magic doesn't work. There was another thing bothering Harry about not being able to use his wandless abilities. He had been able to transform into his animagus form without a problem, but trying to perform a simple lumos caused him intense pain. He wasn't sure what was going on, but he didn't know how to begin figuring it out. He would just have to keep attempting spells and see if something changes. He watched as a father and son strode along the road in front of him. The boy couldn't have been any older than Harry and was happily skipping along while grasping his father's hand. Because he never had a father figure in his early years, Harry didn't understand why his heart suddenly felt heavy from watching this father-son duo. Kakashi returned and motioned for Harry to follow him. Harry got up and stared at Kakashi's empty hand. His hand flexed involuntarily. Harry looked at his hand in shock and shook his head vigorously. This was silly. He was an adult, he didn't need to be coddled. He clenched his hand into a fist and followed Kakashi diligently. Kakashi kept his nose buried in an orange novel as he escorted Harry to the hospital. They were led to a room and a nice old man named Masaki came in to greet them. "So I hear you are the little man who appeared out of nowhere," he said, smiling down at Harry. Harry, who never liked hospitals, tried to smile back but made a pained expression instead. "And you are here just for a checkup, nothing to worry about. My name is Masaki and I'll be your medic today. I'll just need to take a blood and urine sample from you and give you a simple physical." After getting his finger pricked and providing a urine sample, he was told to strip to his boxers and Masaki took his blood pressure, heart rate, and checked his spine. "How old are you, Hari-kun?" Harry shrugged his shoulders and Masaki looked at Kakashi with confusion. He doesn't know how old he is. His memory has been affected, so he doesn't know much about his past at all. Kakashi answered for him. Masaki rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Well, in my professional opinion, I would say he is about 5 years old, though he is a little underweight. I think some nutrient supplements will be beneficial for a couple of months just to get him on track for someone his age." The man smiled and winked at him. Harry nodded, smiling in return. He had always been underweight, so this was no surprise for him. Though the idea of getting to a normal size sounded great. Maybe he didn't have to be the shortest kid his age this time. "Kakashi, I assume you are the one I should contact when the results of the tests come back?" Masaki asked as Harry was redressing. "Yeah, that's fine," Kakashi replied, before lowering his voice. "It was also recommended that Harry speak with someone, is there anyone you would suggest?" Masaki rubbed his chin and thought. "There are a few Yamanaka who specialize in pediatric therapy who may be well suited for him. I'll ask around and see who is available for him." Kakashi nodded and turned toward Harry, who was now fully dressed. "Time to go, Hari-chan." He promptly picked the boy up and jumped out the window. Paddock the medic grumbled after them. "Does he even know how to use a door?" Harry protested on the way down, but Kakashi only chuckled at the boy's antics and waved off his protests. "You'll get used to it. I never use doors." They landed outside and started the trek towards the academy. On the way, Kakashi spotted Genma and Raito talking with two ladies and headed over to introduce Harry to them. "Hari, this is Genma and Raito. Genma is our neighbor and will be watching out for you when I am gone on missions." Harry glanced at the man named Genma. He had short brown hair and held a sharp pointy thing in his mouth. It seemed like a safety hazard to Harry. "Seems we will be spending some time together then, huh?" Genma said and winked at him. "He breaks into a strange language every now and then, but you get used to it." Harry glared at Kakashi with his best attempt at a Snape glare, but apparently 5-year-olds couldn't pull it off very well because Kakashi just lazily smiled back at him. "Aw, isn't he just the cutest?" one of the ladies exclaimed, smiling down at Harry like he was a small puppy. Raito's eyes lit up. "Well, if Genma can't keep him, I am always available to babysit. I just love kids." Raito grinned as the two ladies gushed over how sweet he was to volunteer. Harry rolled his eyes at the vulgar scene. He would not be used to help this man pick up girls if he could help it. "Just ignore him," Genma whispered in Harry's ear. "He is a little single-minded when it comes to the opposite sex." "I'm off to show Harry the academy, but you can come by any time," Kakashi announced, grabbing Harry's hand and leading him down the street again. "Aye." Harry shouted over his shoulder and waved at the ninja as they left them behind. Genma seemed like the type of person he could get along with well. Raito not so much. He never understood the boys in his year who acted like idiots trying to impress the girls in his class. There were always more important things going on in the wizarding world than dating. Though maybe he missed his chance on experiencing the dating life and now he'd have to wait another 10 years before having another go at it. Harry groaned at the thought of going through puberty again. The academy was a medium-sized building with kids sparring in a training field outside. They appeared to be only a little older than Harry and already looked like professionals. Harry and Kakashi watched them in silence for several minutes and Harry silently marveled over what they could do. It was definitely intimidating and weird to think that this was common here. "I was a soldier once and failed. If I want to succeed in this world, I'll have to do it on their terms." "Want to learn?" Harry declared, pointing at the kids sparring. Kakashi patted him on the head. "Well, good, I was hoping you'd say that. We will start training tomorrow." "What?" Harry asked in surprise, starting to feel just a little worried. Did the man trick him somehow? Just what was he getting himself into now? Then Chapter 5. Chapter 6 Training begins. Harry lay gasping on the soft grass. His first day of training consisted of Kakashi wanting to see how in shape Harry was, so Harry suffered through what Kakashi referred to as a fit test. His current body was small and frail, so it was easy to see that Harry needed a lot of work to catch up to the kids he saw at the academy. He kept reminding himself that this was what he wanted, but his reassurances failed to quiet his aching muscles. "First I want to see what your speed and accuracy are," Kakashi had explained when they first arrived earlier that morning. He pulled out some kunai and shuriken from his pouch. "These are blunted so you won't accidentally hurt yourself or others depending on how terrible you are at throwing." Harry glared fiercely at him, but Kakashi continued as if he didn't notice. "I've set up targets all around the trail you'll be running. The objective is to hit as many targets as you can while completing the path as fast as you can." Harry glanced at the path he would be running. It twisted in and out of the forest and surrounded an entire training field. "I was thinking about 3 laps for your first day." And that's how Harry's abysmal morning began. It turned out that though he was deemed average in his speed, his accuracy was horrible. Out of the 30 targets, he might have hit 5 in all 3 of his laps. "Well, at least now we know target practice will be a daily routine when you start your real training," Kakashi noted. "As well as building up your speed. Now, for stamina, I want you to run the perimeter of this training field and count the number of laps you complete until you can't run anymore." Kakashi watched the child struggle as he attempted a 4th lap. It was odd how he kept tripping as though running was a new motion for him. He was impressed Hari had made it this long, though it seemed as if he was running out of steam. Kakashi's guess was correct as he saw the boy stumble to the ground and instead of trying to pick himself up, he stayed down. "Kakashi," Harry panted. "You mean?" He heard a chuckle coming from his right side but was too tired to turn his head. "You'll get used to this kind of work if you really want to become a ninja. You're only 5, so the training you will go through is not something everyone has access to. This will put you way above the other kids your age. Who knows, maybe you will graduate early like I did." Kakashi looked at his watch. "Oh, I was supposed to meet a friend. You'll be okay here for a while." Harry grunted and rolled his eyes. Apparently Kakashi took that as "I'm fine, now go and leave already," and poofed away with a twirl of leaves. "I hurt too much to get up and this ground is comfy. I think a nap is looking like a wonderful idea." And Harry, exhausted from the workout, instantly fell into a dreamless sleep. Harry woke up to the sound of soft breathing next to him. For a split second, he felt like he was back in his 4-poster bed in the Gryffindor dorms until he realized Ron's breathing was much louder and consisted of snoring. He snapped his head toward the sound and saw 2 boys next to him. The sleeping boy lying beside him had his black hair pulled into a spiky ponytail and his hands behind his head like a pillow. The other boy, who was a bit on the larger side, with a brown mane of hair and swirls on his cheeks, sat quietly with a wrinkled bag of empty chips in his lap. Hello?" Harry said hesitantly. The large boy turned to stare at him and gave him an apologetic smile. "Sorry to sneak up on you while you were sleeping. Shikamaru loves taking naps too, so when he saw you laying down over here, he decided we should join you." "But okay," Harry replied, lying back down to stare at the clouds. He pointed to himself. "Harry. Oh, yeah, I'm Akimichi Chouji. This is my best friend Nara Shikamaru. I don't think I've ever seen you before." He is the new boy that the Jounin had at Kakashi took in. The sleeping boy startled Harry when he suddenly decided to join in the conversation. "My dad was telling me about you. I hear you can turn into a wolf." Harry nodded, embarrassed. He didn't realize other people would know who he was. This wasn't like in the wizarding world. He wasn't famous here and scars were common among ninja. "I guess even in this ninja world I had to be viewed as different somehow," he thought grimly. "Welcome to the second life of the still famous Harry Potter. You can turn into a wolf. That's so cool. Can you show us?" the round boy asked excitedly. Harry nodded and a second later, he was being pet by the Akimichi boy. "Shikamaru, this is amazing. Do you know if it is a bloodline trait?" The lazy boy turned his head to study Harry's small wolf form. "I've never heard of any ninja being able to do something like this, especially without hand signs. There is a strong possibility that it's some type of bloodline, but I have never heard of it." Harry's wolf enjoyed the scent of the 2 boys. One smelled of sweet barbec and the other's scent was like a forest. He liked them both. He transformed back and the Akimichi boy cheered and patted him on the back. "Do you want to play with us sometime? We usually go and play ninja with some of the kids in our class. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you came along." Harry hesitated but agreed nonetheless. Even though playing with little kids didn't sound like the greatest idea, these 2 boys were very nice and it wouldn't hurt to act like a real child sometimes. Kakashi stared as Harry inhaled his lunch. Since the boy was his responsibility now, he took to studying the oddities that came from the child. It was strange that for a boy so young, he seemed to have haunted eyes at times. Eyes like the shinobi that fought in the last war. Now, there were times when Harry was so excited that he lit up like a happy 5-year-old should, but those oddly would also surprise the boy. Strange indeed. He wondered if the medic had found a suitable therapist for Hari to meet with. If the boy's nightmares were any indication of what he went through before coming to Konoha, therapy would be imperative for his growth and healing. It has been mentioned to me that I should find you a tutor, Kakashi announced, startling Hari away from his food. You need to learn more of the history of the villages and how to speak properly. It's not my fault I can't speak perfectly yet. Hari responded, only to blush crimson when he heard it come out yet again as English. Okay, maybe I do need a few lessons. And I definitely want to start learning some of the history from this world. I wonder if I could convince Guy to teach you. Maybe make it into some sort of challenge. Hari could barely hear Kakashi's mutterings, but still felt a chill down the back of his spine. Yosh. My esteemed rival has revealed a new challenge for me. I am to teach you how to speak proper Japanese, and I will complete this before he is able to teach you chakra control. I will win or I will do 1000 push-ups and sit-ups. If I cannot do that I will do 100 laps around Konoha on my hands. Guy struck a pose and grinned maniacally, which absolutely terrified Hari. And so began the first day of Hari's real training. He woke at 7, cooked breakfast with Kakashi, and then began his lessons. Kakashi had a month off of active duty, so he had time to train Hari. Kakashi decided to continue working with him on his speed and accuracy in throwing the ninja weapons on top of helping him with chakra control. Hari went to see Guy afterwards and was forced into the man's crazy teaching traditions. Guy believed that learning was part mind part body, so before they began his language lessons, the two of them went on a 2-hour run to prepare his mind for youthful learning. In the late afternoon, Kakashi showed Hari how to meditate and work on locating his chakra. These exercises will help you learn chakra control. If you are not focused, you won't be able to utilize your chakra for jutsu. So, Hari spent the whole afternoon with a leaf placed on his forehead, trying to keep it balanced while he meditated. Chakra was something obviously foreign to him. It was so different than magic, and he was not used to anything else being used as a source of power. As a result, the leaf stubbornly refused to stick to his skin for more than a few seconds. Don't get frustrated or you will lose focus and your concentration will be shot. Kakashi's advice seemed helpful, but did not make the exercise any easier. They went back to Kakashi's apartment that night with Hari's head hung dejectedly toward the ground. Don't worry Hari, no one gets this on their first try. Or their second try. Focusing your chakra for someone your age is very difficult, but if you practice and work hard, it will become second nature to you one day. Thanks, Kakashi, Hari said, grateful for the optimism in Kakashi's words, but still annoyed. It may be difficult for someone who is actually 5, but he wasn't. He should be able to learn things much faster than a normal kid. They walked in a comfortable silence until Hari's stomach rumbled loudly, much to his embarrassment. He looked up sheepishly at his guardian. I suppose we should stop and get some dinner first, Kakashi stated while chuckling. He was starting to grow fond of his ward and beginning to believe that it wasn't a total disaster in volunteering to look after him. Even if the Hokage all but forced him. Hari was thankful for his first day of training. He was so exhausted that night, he had no time to think about his past or have any dreams at all. However, he woke up the next day with his muscles screaming in pain. When Hari told Kakashi about his soreness, Kakashi gave him a scary smile. You'll work out the soreness during your training today, he said a bit sadistically. Hari's training routine the next day was the same as the first day except after lunch, the two boys Shikamaru and Choji came to see if he wanted to play ninja with them. Hari didn't know what playing ninja was, nor could he see the fun in playing ninja with children. Still, Hari found himself looking up at Kakashi for approval. Of course Hari can go with you. He is still having trouble speaking, so don't think it's weird if he speaks gibberish. Cute glare. But Hari-chan, be sure to be back for your chakra control training later tonight. Hari nodded and leapt toward his new acquaintances. Aye. Hari yelled out the door, waving jauntily. Kakashi watched him go with a strange expression gracing his covered face. Hey everybody. This is Hari and he is here to play ninja with us. Choji remarked happily as the three joined a group of kids running around in an odd pattern Hari couldn't figure out. One of the boys approached Hari and leaned into his face, inspecting him. He seems a little too young to play with us, the boy said finally, and Hari couldn't help but get irritated. This boy reminded him remarkably like Dudley. It was like elementary school all over again. Oh, come on Akio, he is only a few years younger than us, and he has already started training to be a ninja, so I think that qualifies him to play with us, Choji retorted. Too bad Akimichi, I say he's too young, and I don't want him to play with us. The boy named Akio hollered at them. DSK, troublesome. Choji, we will find people to make our own ninja game, Shikamaru stated and turned to walk off. As Choji and Hari caught up with him, he looked at Hari and said, don't worry about those kids. They are from civilian families and don't understand the importance of clans sticking together. Clans? Harry had heard others referring to clan business, but he wasn't sure what it meant. Clans are what make ninja villages strong, with either unique jutsu known only to members of a particular clan or a Kekkei Genkai, particular abilities that are passed down genetically. Civilian ninja are important, too, of course, but the clans are what give every village a unique set of strengths and weaknesses. Shikamaru explained. And Harry thought over the information about bloodline limits. The fates told me I would carry someone's old bloodline. I wonder what it could be. Harry heard a commotion coming from where the kids were playing the ninja game. A blonde boy had come up to them apparently wanting to play as well. Harry stared as he watched a couple of parents swoop in and practically carry their children away from the boy. He noticed the parents' glares at the child and Harry wondered what he had possibly done to warrant that reaction. He followed the boy with his eyes as the kid walked dejectedly toward a single swing to play by himself. "Hey," Harry said softly tapping Shikamaru's shoulder, not wanting to be overheard. Him? Why?" It seems Shikamaru was able to understand what he was wanting to say. "Ah, that is Uzumaki Naruto. He is in our class at the academy and is a prankster." Shikamaru put his hands behind his head and sighed. All the adults have always hated Naruto for some reason and tell their kids not to talk to him even before he was pranking people all the time. I asked Dad about it, but he wouldn't tell me why. Harry gave him a confused expression. "And you?" "Both our dads told us to make our own decision," Chaoji piped in. "Naruto is loud and annoying sometimes, but he is funny, so I don't mind him." Harry glanced at Shikamaru, waiting for his response. Shikamaru sighed. "Naruto is troublesome and kind of an idiot, but he's not a bad guy. He doesn't deserve all the hate he receives from others." Harry nodded, secretly glad these two weren't the type to pick on someone just because others did. He was reminded of his childhood as Harry Potter when he was bullied and ignored because his cousin didn't want anyone to like him. He knew how terribly lonely it was to be left out of all the games by the other kids. "I also know how devastating it is to have everyone hate you too," Harry thought bitterly, reminiscing about his fifth year when the whole school and the media hated him. "But at least I had some friends on my side then. This boy doesn't have anybody." "Chaoji." "Shikamaru. It's time for you to come back home for clan training." An older man in a shinobi uniform came over and gestured for the two boys to follow him. "What a drag," Shikamaru mumbled. He stuck his hands in his pockets and lazily started to follow the shinobi. "See you later, Hari." "Bye, Hari," Chaoji said enthusiastically. "We will definitely get our own group together to play next time." "Bye," Harry replied, waving his hand. He then looked around for the blonde boy so he could introduce himself, but the swings were empty and the boy was nowhere in sight. Hopefully the boy was around next time so they could invite him to play. Harry walked back to his apartment much happier than before. These two boys were good kids, so he wouldn't mind spending more time with them. He also had the potential to help someone who really needed a friend as well. As someone who knows how it feels to be left out, I don't like seeing someone treated like that. To Kakashi's chagrin, Harry soaked up all the language lessons very quickly. They assumed it was because his amnesia made him forget how to speak, so him getting reacquainted to the language came easily. After only a week, a triumphant guy strutted around the village to let everyone know of his latest victory over his rival. "Yosh, I have been victorious in a challenge of my rival's choosing. The springtime of youth has yet again triumphed over the hip Kakashi." Even though the two were inside their apartment, Kakashi and Harry could hear Guy's shouts through the walls. "Does he always do this when he wins?" Harry asked cautiously, thankful for the ability to voice his thoughts completely. "I have come to realize I should never assume anything when it comes to Guy," Kakashi casually replied. "Kakashi?" Harry glanced at his guardian with pleading eyes. Please, never, ever instigate a competition between the two of you ever again. At least not one that you won't win. I will run 100 laps around Konoha in celebration. If I cannot complete that, I will walk 50 laps around Konoha on my hands." With his final statement, Guy set off to begin his multitude of laps around the village. Sighs of relief were heard all around as soon as Guy left the villagers alone. Kakashi gave Harry his famous eye smile. "Yes, I doubt I will do that again." Harry grinned with relief written across his face. Instead of discontinuing Harry's lessons, Guy decided he would teach him hand-to-hand combat. "We will begin with the academy-level taijutsu. With your small size though," Harry glared, "we might have to incorporate some variations for you." Guy showed Harry the katas he would be practicing and helped him perfect the motions. Harry's body slowly began to adapt to the new routines and he became faster and more agile as the practice continued. Maybe there was a method to the madness of Guy's insane traditions after all. Genma, who had started to become a regular addition to Harry's daily life, decided he would teach Harry proper manners, including the correct honorifics to use and how to bow. He thought it was quite funny to see the little boy struggle so much on a simple bow. "Hari, it's very simple. The depth of the bow determines the respect or familiarity you have with the person you are bowing to. Genma showed him yet again an example of a bow used for a cage or the head of a family. Harry moved his torso forward awkwardly. Genma chuckled at the attempt as Harry scowled at him. I never had to bow to anyone in the wizarding world. No one did. Well, come to think of it, that odd wizard Legolas Diggle bowed to me once when I was a kid. Harry inwardly grinned at the expression on his aunt's face after it happened. She'd have a coronary if she saw the people I'm associated with now. They dress even stranger than wizards. He smiled at the thought and then continued with his practice. All of his lessons were tough and demanding, but Harry was feeling stronger and healthier than he had ever felt in his life. I am given regular meals and exercising, two things that never happened with the Dursleys, if I didn't count running from Dudley during Harry hunting or weeding the garden. I wonder if I'll be able to grow to a more normal height instead of the scrawny 5'7" I used to be. He grinned at the implication. Bring it on, Ninja World. Harry thought with an inward grin. I'm ready for you. End chapter 6. Chapter 7 Forming Bonds. 3 months later and Harry was rapidly improving in his training. With his new eyesight, hitting targets actually came pretty easy for Harry once he felt comfortable with the movements. Not having to deal with flimsy glasses any longer also proved to be most advantageous. Though he wasn't strong enough to throw a kunai very hard, 7 times out of 10 he hit the bullseye. The workouts for Quidditch during his school years paled in comparison to what his workouts now entailed with Kakashi. He finally got to the point where he was enjoying the pain and soreness and felt invigorated after a long run. It was silly to think that as a 5-year-old child he was in the best shape of his life, though it was nevertheless true. On top of the workouts, he continued training with his chakra as well. It took Harry a few extra weeks longer than he would have liked, but he finally had a breakthrough with his chakra control. Once he figured out that chakra was channeled through his body like wandless magic, he was able to balance the leaf easier and longer each time he tried. He used his memories of the wandless lessons with Snape to understand exactly what he needed to do. Otter, you must focus. The Dark Lord will be using every advantage he possesses against you. If you are unable to gain some decent dueling skills, you will fail, and all our work will be for naught. Harry coughed and struggled to catch his breath, his hands placed on his knees. He wiped the sweat off his brow and held his right hand up again in preparation. Snape gave him no warning before sending an array of curses his direction. Harry ducked and fired a half-formed curse with his hand toward the oncoming attacks. Otter, pay attention to the direction of your spells. A missed attack is a failed attack and will only be wasting your power. Harry stopped moving as Snape approached him with a sneer. And I have to say, Potter, that was pretty pathetic. Even if that spell had hit me, it would have only paused me for a second. Harry winced and forced down a spiteful retort. Even though Snape and Harry had put aside their past aggression toward each other, Snape never wasted an opportunity to knock Harry down a notch. His sneer softened as he continued. You are not channeling your magic into your hand correctly. With wandless magic, there is no wand to channel the magic in your core to the desired destination. You have to use your body as the wand and your hand as the release point. Visualize this when casting. Now, again. These lessons continued until Harry was able to cast all types of spells wandlessly, making Snape, though he denied it until the end, an extremely proud mentor. Even though his chakra control was improving, Harry was having no headway with his wandless magic whatsoever. Every night before he went to bed, he would meditate and concentrate on his magical core to try to cast a spell into his hand. The now familiar jolt of pain still shot down his arm each time, becoming a throbbing ache throughout the entire appendage. He knew he probably should stop trying. Common sense told him to stop, that this was 100% causing more harm than was necessary, but he just couldn't give up the hope that his magic would come back to him. Harry was also meeting with Yamanaka Naoji once a week to talk. Harry had never been to a therapist before, so it was new to tell things about himself to a complete stranger. Since most of his experiences were from a past life, there wasn't much he could say when Naoji asked about life before Konoha. They usually chatted about Kakashi, training, and how he was getting along with everyone. It was relaxing to talk through the adjustments to his new life. Even though he couldn't explain details, Harry also spoke about the sadness of losing his family, the fear of the future, and his nightmares. Now San helped him start working through his overwhelming grief and how to heal. He also talked through how to cope with nightmares, which was surprisingly helpful. Harry understood why therapy was recommended for him. He would have benefited largely from it in the past to deal with the abuse from the Dursleys, the pressure of being thrust into the spotlight, and the struggles of surviving in a tumultuous wizarding world. Harry was winding down his usual morning stretches and katas before his training for the day. His movements and form were close to perfect, and soon he'd be able to start learning how to fight. Kakashi was pleased with Harry's progress. The little 5-year-old was improving rapidly with his speed, accuracy, chakra control, and now learning the basics of Taijutsu. You may become a talented shinobi after all, Kakashi announced after Harry finished going through the katas while balancing a leaf to his forehead using chakra control. Harry grinned. Yeah, and one day I'll be even better than you, Harry said cheekily, skipping around Kakashi with the leaf still firmly attached to his forehead. It's always possible. Though, you'd have to be able to catch me first. Kakashi took off and Harry laughed and cheerfully chased after him. Both of them enjoyed the brief moments where they could act like kids, though in Harry's case, it was more like acting his own apparent age. Harry had steadily grown fond of his guardian through the 3 months being in the Hidden Leaf Village. Kakashi was like the big brother he never had but thoroughly wished for. He also let Harry be independent, which was very lucky. Not many people would give a 5-year-old as much leeway as Kakashi did. And Kakashi never admitted it aloud, but he was quite happy Harry had come into his life as well. The only family he had before was his sensei's son, and he wasn't allowed to approach him yet. If the Yondame's last student started to act familiar to Naruto before he was a shinobi, people could possibly make the connection of Naruto's birth parents and would lead to him getting many dangerous enemies, or so he was told. Other than Kakashi, Guy and Genma had also wormed their way into Harry's life and acted like doting uncles, wanting to help Harry grow as a shinobi and as a happy and healthy young boy. Though they were only a few years older than his past self, Harry looked up to all three of them very much. Let's go get some lunch, Hari, Kakashi said when he noticed the boy slowing down and taking deep breaths. And Genma said he would drop by to see if you wanted to go and train with him. Harry grinned up at Kakashi but was still too out of breath from chasing him to answer. Kakashi took this as a yes and started to meander back to the apartment, pulling out a familiar orange book to read while checking over his shoulder to make sure Harry was following. On his walk back to the apartment, Harry felt a shock jolt up his right arm. He hissed in response, but the painful sensation went away as quickly as it appeared. What was that? Harry wondered. Did I push myself too far last night? He flexed both his arms instinctively, waiting to see if the pain would occur again. Harry saw Kakashi falter briefly in front of him, most likely checking to see if he was okay. Harry continued his walk to the apartment and after a few moments of moving his arms about, he shook his head and dismissed it as a fluke. It was probably nothing after all. They arrived at Kakashi's apartment and Harry ordered Kakashi to sit and let him fix some lunch. Kakashi sat down at the table at Harry's insistence and watched the boy scurry around the kitchen with interest. Harry's taste in food was more eccentric than Kakashi was used to. Just the night before, Harry made a bizarre casserole of ingredients that was odd but strangely delicious. Kakashi wondered if they were recipes from his dead parents or things he made up to get by. Here. Harry exclaimed, setting down a surprisingly normal plate of onigiri in between his seat and Kakashi's. Genma showed me how to make these the other day. Now I can make normal food too. Kakashi smiled under his mask at the excitement his young charge was showing when talking about learning how to cook new food. He personally didn't see the interest in cooking anything. His idea of a good home-cooked meal was instant noodles. The perk of having a cook in the house, though, was always having a homemade meal, and this was definitely a good thing in Kakashi's book. Something smells good in here. Genma's head popped through the window before he climbed into the kitchen. Harry had learned very quickly that windows were much more popular for ninja to use than doors. Yep, I cooked lunch, Harry piped up, hurrying over to make Genma a plate as well. Genma grinned happily at the food placed in front of him and he tucked in. You did a great job with this, Harry, I'm impressed. Harry smiled at the compliment as he made his own plate before sitting down. So, Hari, Genma said through mouthfuls of food, would you like to come and do a bit of training with me today? Harry's eyes lit up. Training with Genma was always interesting. When Genma taught, it reminded him of Remus's lessons in defense. Lessons were hands-on and unique, but always informative. Last time they had done in the field training and Genma had him stalking one of the Chunin instructors for a good 20 minutes before said Chunin caught on. The training now involved into him stalking anyone and everyone at different times each day to see how long he could go without getting caught. Genma said it was good stealth training for later on. Yes, of course. Harry agreed immediately. He finished his lunch quickly and Kakashi waved him off when he started picking the dishes up. You cooked, so I'll clean. Go ahead and train with Genma. Kakashi gave his famous eye smile and shooed the two of them out the window. Genma led him across rooftops and stopped on a roof overlooking the main street. Harry was proud of his improvements with maneuvering on the tops of buildings. He was hesitant in the beginning, but realized how much easier it made traveling around the village. The streets were bustling with afternoon shoppers and shinobi traveling through, so traveling above them vastly shortened their travel time. Okay, Hari. This training is going to be a little different than the usual stealth training we've been doing. Genma pointed at a young teenage girl looking at jewelry displayed at a stand and gazing particularly at a pair of sparkly earrings. Now, that girl in the purple dress. Is she a kunoichi or a civilian? Harry narrowed his eyes to stare at the girl, but nothing out of the ordinary stuck out to him. Bare civilian. Genma smirked and shook his head. She's been a genin for a few years now, Genma stated, and Harry's eyes widened before turning to study the girl in a new light. Look closely. Watch the way she instinctively glances at her surroundings. Her body also moves in a swift and lucid way, and you can see the trained muscles flex in her arms and calves. If you look at her right thigh too, you can see the impression of the kunai held there. Harry tried his best to notice everything Genma was saying, proud when he was able to spot the kunai strapped to her thigh and saw her body flex instinctively as a passing merchant brushed against her shoulder. Being able to determine whether the people around you are shinobi or civilians is vital to your survival when on a mission outside the village. So today you will be attempting to find the off-duty shinobi in the crowd. We won't get too detailed for your first time, but later on I'll have you determine what level the shinobi is. When you become better at noticing the details, you'll know what kind of a threat any foreign shinobi is and whether you can fight them or need a quick escape. Barry sat dutifully in a comfortable spot on the roof and started to scrutinize the crowd, searching for any of the details Genma had mentioned. Genma surprised him by jumping down and buying them both a box of dango. People watching is much better when you have a delicious snack, Genma said innocently, munching on his first stick of dango. Don't lie Genma, you just always want dango. Genma chose not to reply, his mouth full of dango. They sat on the roof together eating dango and watched as the shinobi and civilians passed by. Harry spent the time guessing, with Genma confirming or correcting, and he got it right about half of the time. This is a very informative lesson, Harry said after about half an hour. Your trainings are always interesting, Genma. Don't tell Kakashi that, or he might get jealous, Genma replied, sending Harry into a fit of laughter though the excess of sugar Harry had consumed might have been the cause. Harry slowly started to become more proficient at spotting the differences between the civilians and shinobi, though the off-duty jounin still fooled him most of the time. Genma made him feel a little better by telling him it took him years to notice the high-rank jounin hidden in crowds. After finishing all of their dango, Genma stated the training session was over and they both headed back to the apartment. On the way there, Harry glimpsed Shikamaru and Chaoji and they waved him over. Genma pushed him towards his friends and Harry wandered over to where they were playing. Hey, Hari, we haven't seen you in a while, Chaoji said while munching on some chips. Harry rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he had picked up from Kakashi. Well, I'm hoping to start at the academy soon and Kakashi has been helping me learn more about being a shinobi. Sounds like you are going to be really bored in there if you already know everything, Shikamaru commented. Though it's always boring there, especially the first year, so I guess it doesn't matter. Well, Kakashi graduated early when he was younger and I'm kind of hoping that I can be like him and graduate early too, Harry replied, admitting for the first time his goal for the academy. He didn't want Kakashi to know what he was aspiring for in case he was disappointed when Harry didn't succeed. I heard it is really hard to do that, but I'm sure you can do it, Hari. Chaoji stated confidently, giving Harry a warm smile. Harry responded with his own, grateful that the boys didn't make fun of his ambition. So, do you guys have time to play another game of ninja? Harry asked, a little guilty he hadn't sought after the two boys too often. Shikamaru glanced at his watch. Actually, Chaoji and I are late for dinner at his house already. This was verified by a large shinobi from Chaoji's clan trying to catch their attention. Next time for sure though. Oh yeah, Hari, before we go, we promised one of the boys in our class that we would introduce you to him, Chaoji stated. Kiba is from the Inyazuka clan who raise and fight with nin dogs. He wanted to see your wolf form. And then we can all play ninja tag. Yeah, that sounds fun. And I haven't really transformed in a while, so it will be nice to let Mooney come out and stretch his legs. All three of the boys grinned. Want to meet us outside the academy after school ends tomorrow? We can show you around as well, since you are going to be starting there soon. Harry nodded his consent and headed back to his own apartment where Kakashi was waiting. While Harry was out with Genma, Kakashi was summoned to the Hokage's office for a meeting. So how has our young Hari been? Have you noticed any oddities about him to help figure out where he could be from? Nothing other than not knowing what chopsticks were and strange cooking recipes, Kakashi replied with a slow shrug. Other than that, he really just seems like a normal young boy that had to grow up too fast. I've spoken with Yamanaka-san who said his therapy sessions are going well, but he still won't open up about the specifics of his past, the Hokage said. He puffed another ring from his pipe. We've put out word about his sister, but with so little information, there have been no leads. I don't want him to be fretting about her still being missing. Has he remembered anything more about his sister? He hasn't really mentioned her at all since he came into my care, so I don't think he has remembered anything, but I will ask him later. Kakashi replied. The Hokage hummed thoughtfully. I have been thinking about Hari's situation and I have decided that you should go ahead and incorporate him into the academy. He should be training with children his own age. His training with you has been beneficial, but now he needs to learn from his peers about teamwork and what it means to have the will of fire. The next day during training, Kakashi called Harry over after he finished going through the training course for the third time. He was only a bit winded, his body having built the necessary muscle to complete the tasks Kakashi dealt out for him day after day. That's enough for now. I've talked to the Hokage, the first-year academy teacher, and we've decided that if you are willing, you can start classes beginning next week. Yes. Harry agreed excitedly with a grin, all the weariness from training forgotten. Also, the Hokage wanted me to make sure you were doing okay with everything. Harry looked up at him curiously, not really understanding the question. Kakashi continued, well, you came here searching for your sister, and we haven't been able to locate her yet. The Hokage has all of his networks putting word out to keep an eye out for a girl searching for a boy named Hari, but no leads have come up so far. Have you remembered anything else about her that would help in the search? I'm sorry for not asking how you were about this earlier. Harry looked down guiltily. He had almost completely forgotten about the so-called sister that was supposed to be coming after him. But he didn't even know who she was or when she was going to be arriving in this world, so it had just slipped his mind. I'm okay. I haven't remembered anything about her, but I know she will come sooner or later. I'm sure of it, Harry responded confidently, giving Kakashi a big smile. And I really like living with you and training with you, Guy and Genma. You guys have really become like a family to me. Harry blushed immediately after realizing what he had just said. He didn't mean to comment on his feelings toward his guardian out loud, especially if Kakashi did not see him the same way. Kakashi patted Harry on the head and gave him his famous eye smile. I couldn't agree more. Harry felt a lump in his throat. Both his 19-year-old self and his 5-year-old self yearned for family, and Kakashi's offhand reply made Harry feel like he could burst with happiness. He tried to play it off nonchalantly as they walked back home for lunch, but he knew Kakashi noticed the small smile and the not-so-casual movement of wiping his sleeve against his glistening eyes. The speaker, you say? The quiet haunting voice asked. Yes, the word has spread to all my brethren. He is a snake with no scales and is one of our kin. You are not allowed to hurt him, or I will eat you. The summons bared his poisonous fangs to show the seriousness of his threat. Hurt the boy? Oh, no, I have plans for this one. I can't wait to meet him. Coo. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 Mooney, Spars, and Growing Pains. Harry ambled down the street toward the academy to wait for Shikamaru and Choji to show him around. Kakashi had put him through a grueling training practice that morning, so he could have the afternoon off to see the two boys. He arrived at the academy a little early, and he sat on the nearby swing to amuse himself by twirling around in circles. While he was waiting, he decided to try channeling his magic into his hand again. It was almost habit attempting to use magic whenever he was alone to see if maybe this time it would work. It was illogical, stupid even, to keep trying, but he just couldn't stop. Lumos, he whispered, holding out his right hand and concentrating, forcing the old familiar presence of magic into his hand. The now very typical pain shot down his arm, coursing through his fingers like lightning. He hissed involuntarily and stopped attempting the spell. His right hand stung for 3 to 4 minutes before falling into a relieving state of numbness. The pain in his arm had lasted longer than it ever had previously, and that realization made him frown. This is going to be a problem. Harry heard noise coming from inside the building, and a few seconds later, kids spilled out into the front of the academy. Bibba, here is the boy we've been telling you about. Choji said happily, leading a wild-looking boy over to the swing Harry was currently occupying. Harry jumped off the swing and walked over to where Choji and Shikamaru were standing. Hi, I'm Harry, he said, smiling up at the much taller 7-year-old. The boy reminded him of a young Remus, except that this boy's canine features were evident on his face. I'm Kiba, the boy replied excitedly. I hear you can turn into a wolf. Can I see? Kiba's announcement was a little loud, and a few of the academy students overheard and began peering over at Harry. Of course, Harry said, glancing uneasily at the growing crowd. Even now, he still didn't like being at the center of attention. He transformed into Mooney, and the other 7-year-olds gasped in surprise. Aw, he is so cute. That's so cool. Can he teach us how to do that? I wish I could take him home. Mooney preened under the attention, but Harry sat stiffly as some of the academy students pet his fur. A flash of orange caught his eye, and Harry turned to see the young blonde he remembered from the playground a few months back. Harry had searched for the boy a few times, but felt guilty he didn't try harder to find and befriend the lonely boy. Determined to make up for his previous lack of effort, Harry bounded over to the boy and tackled him to the ground, barking and wagging his tail playfully. The boy laughed out loud and began to chase Harry around the yard. Leave him alone, Naruto. A blonde girl screeched. A few of the other kids started yelling at him as well, but Harry decided to stop this before it escalated too quickly and transformed back. Naruto isn't doing anything wrong, Harry stated firmly. He didn't like the pack mentality of the children here. It was too much like his past. Harry stayed back, our parents said he is dangerous. Dangerous? A 7-year-old. Harry almost started laughing at the ridiculousness of it. The poor kid looked so dejected by the comments of his peers. Harry knew when these kids got older, this bias would change, but it seemed their bullying only extended from how the older generation perceived the boy. Harry didn't understand why Naruto was hated. It made him more determined to gain the boy's friendship. It is ridiculous to think of a young boy as dangerous, Harry called out to the kids who were yelling. You know what? Naruto is going to be my friend from now on. He grinned at the shocked faces, but none were more shocked than Naruto. He stared gaping at Harry, looking as though he didn't dare believe what the boy had said. So Harry, taking advantage of the boy's hesitation, grabbed his hand and pulled him over the Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba. Why don't we all play ninja? Harry offered, looking at Naruto for confirmation. You guys can show me around the academy some other time. What do you think, Naruto? Do you want to play with us? The blinding smile from the young boy made it all worth it. Kakashi peered from behind a tree at the young kids playing in the yard. He couldn't help but grin proudly at Harry's announcement of friendship to Naruto. At least my kid can see past the ridiculous judgmental comments made by most everyone else in the village. Kakashi choked as he realized what he had just thought. My kid, eh? He slipped into the safety of the trees to head to his favorite training ground. He needed to stop this line of thought before it became dangerous. Harry had a blast playing with Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, and Naruto. Though he felt too old to be playing and at times it felt a bit awkward, watching Naruto beam happily at him every time he looked his way made it more than tolerable. He decided it would be fine to play with the boys on a normal basis, just to ensure this boy always had kids to play with. And soon I'm going to be going to the academy with you guys too, Harry said as they wrapped up the end of the game. I won't be in your class or anything, but I'll get to see you guys more now. Shikamaru looked at him thoughtfully. You said you've been training under Hada Kakashi ever since you came here, right? Harry nodded his agreement. Humph, troublesome. I doubt you last a week in the lower classes. What you mean by that? Naruto yelled, growling in Shikamaru's direction. Hari-kun is going to do great. He won't fail, believe it. That's not what I meant, Naruto. Shikamaru rubbed his forehead in annoyance. I meant that Hari is probably going to be too advanced for those lower classes and will end up getting moved to a more difficult class. But that's just my guess. Well, Kakashi said I was almost to Genin level now, Harry said thoughtfully, as the other 4 boys stared in shock. So I guess it wouldn't be too strange to be moved up a class or two. He also had the benefit of having a mature mental state, so learning new things and grasping concepts was incredibly easy compared to the other children his age. Hari, you are just full of surprises, Kiba announced with a grin. Glad that I got to meet you before you went and become a big famous ninja out there. I'm the last person who wants to be famous, trust me on that one, Harry said confidently. He chuckled a little on the inside. These guys have no idea. Harry left the boys to head back to his apartment for the night. Naruto didn't want to stop playing, but Harry promised him they would do it again soon and the boy finally agreed to head home as well. He decided to travel as Mooney since he rarely used his wolf form anymore and the day had reminded him how much he loved it. He passed a delightful smelling shop filled with exotic herbal aromas and paused to enjoy the scents tickling his nose. As he sat there sniffing the air, he saw one of the academy boys pass by who'd left the school at the same time as Shikamaru and Choji. Maybe they are all in the same class. Harry wondered before Mooney decided he wanted to follow him. The scent coming from the boy was burning ember and something else even Mooney couldn't identify, so of course he was curious. Feeling a bit like a stalker but justifying it as stealth practice, he followed the boy through the village, keeping to the shadows. The black-haired boy in question began looking over his shoulder every now and again, and Harry would dart into bushes and behind trash cans to avoid being seen. Harry grinned, showing off his baby canines. This was fun. It reminded him of one of Genma's training sessions and he couldn't wait to tell his older friend about it. Harry turned a corner and hesitated. The boy had disappeared. He sniffed and could still smell the ember but didn't see the young ninja to be anywhere. Harry was about to transform back into himself when he was suddenly picked up from behind. He began panicking before realizing it was the boy from before. There you are. Why have you been following me? Are you lost? The boy studied Harry for a moment before tucking him under his arm and walking in a completely different direction. Harry couldn't believe it. He'd been caught. Never mind telling Genma about this, he would never speak of it ever again. Now who do you belong to? The Inyazukas. The boy muttered to himself, smiling shyly at Harry. I thought they only trained dogs though, not wolves. Harry, still embarrassed and trying to decide whether to show himself or not, hung limply in the boy's arm. "But if you don't belong to anyone, want to stay with me? My Nai-san is always too busy for me, so it would be nice to have someone to play with." Harry just nodded, surprising the boy. So you must be pretty smart. Maybe you'll be a good wolfnin when you get older." This boy must be pretty lonely if he wants to play with a wolf pup, Harry thought. But why doesn't he play with the other kids in the academy then? Harry made a decision then. To hell with it, if he was going around befriending all the downtrodden and lonely children of this village, he might as well be thorough about it. Hermione would be proud. He hopped out of the boy's arm and transformed, smirking at the boy's dropped jaw. "Hi, my name's Harry," he said, rubbing his hair with embarrassment. "Sorry for following you. My Will thought you smelled good so he wanted to meet you. And I wanted to test my stealth by hiding, though it seems I may need more practice." He grinned sheepishly. I'm Sasuke. Wait, you're the wolf from the academy today. Is it a Kekai Genkai? I guess you could say that. I don't think I could teach anyone how to do it." Sasuke nodded. That's pretty cool. Well, I'm off to go train, so I'll see you." Wait. Would you mind if I trained with you? I've only ever trained with older people and never someone close to my age." It was sudden, but Harry actually considered it a good idea. If he wanted to be ready for the academy, he needed to train with others closer to his own apparent age. Sasuke raised his eyebrow. "Do you think you can keep up? You're pretty young." Harry nodded fervently. "Alright, come on, I'll teach you a few things, but if you're too slow, I'll leave you behind." Sasuke led him to the woods close to the Uchiha compound. They arrived at an open area and Harry spotted some worn wooden posts battered with holes. He figured this was Sasuke's typical training spot. Sasuke started to run through the academy katas as warm-up and Harry went through the version Guy taught him. They went through some throwing drills and Sasuke seemed surprised Harry wasn't lying about his training. It made the boy curious to how strong Harry really was. "Who trained you?" he asked suddenly, startling Harry out of his focus on the target. The younger boy faltered and brought his kunai back to his side. "My guardian had Kakashi, his friend Guy, and my neighbor Genma." Sasuke's eyes widened at the name Hada Kakashi, remembering his brother mentioned it a few times in conversations with their father. This boy must be pretty strong then. Sasuke peered down at Harry thoughtfully. "So, do you want to spar?" he asked. Harry grinned and agreed immediately. He was excited to spar against someone close to his own physical age and wanted to gauge his ability against someone already in the academy. Kakashi, Guy, and Genma were great sparring partners, but they always went easy on him and infuriatingly still managed to win. Sasuke led Harry to a nearby training field not far from where Harry usually trained, so they would have a bit more space to run around. He felt a chakra flare to notify him that Kakashi was around somewhere close by. "I'd better show him that I can keep up with the academy kids, or he might change his mind about letting me attend." "First to draw blood, then?" Sasuke inquired and Harry nodded. That seemed to be the best way to identify a winner. If they fought to a forfeit, some shinobi wouldn't give up until they passed out or were too injured to move. Not a good way to end a friendly spar. "Okay, begin." Both boys hesitated a second before Sasuke charged in close and they began testing each other with taijutsu. Sasuke's arms and legs were longer and he was stronger than Harry, who was quickly put on the defensive. Harry felt every punch that he blocked connect with his forearms with bruising force. After taking 2 such blows, Harry jumped back to open the distance between them. He wasn't expecting the ball of fire thrown his way and he only just managed to dodge, staining his clothes with grass as he tumbled across the ground in a controlled roll. Apparently, Sasuke was way ahead of his classmates if he was able to perform fire jutsu on that level. He'd have to be careful not to get caught or he'd be seriously burnt. Harry threw a series of shuriken that had Sasuke dancing back in a retreat and gave him a few precious seconds to think of a strategy. Kakashi hadn't started teaching him any ninjutsu yet and in this matchup, ninjutsu would win over close-range fighting. If Kakashi is watching, maybe this will be a good motivation to see that he needs to start teaching me ninjutsu, he mused with a touch of irritation. The plan was slowly forming in his mind. He threw a smoke bomb from his shinobi pack he wore around his waist and began sprinting head-on towards Sasuke as plumes of thick gray smoke engulfed their training area. Using chakra to enhance his muscles, something he learned just recently, he flipped over the boy's head while Sasuke coughed on the fumes. The smoke dissipated as Harry landed lightly on his feet and he crouched under the expected kick coming from an annoyed 7-year-old. His duck turned into a sweeping kick against Sasuke's sole supporting leg and the older boy stumbled off balance. Harry threw the kunai still in his left hand and smirked as it nicked Sasuke's side as the academy student was a little too late, turning his tumble into a roll. Sasuke corrected his balance and rubbed a fist against his side where Harry had hit him. The kunai had barely scraped him, but it was enough to break the skin. A little smear of red appeared on Sasuke's hand. With the realization that their fight was over, the adrenaline slowly began to drain from Harry's body, and he became aware of the ache from the bruises that must be already forming on his arms and a sharper pain in his right shoulder. He turned his chin to look and hissed at the sight of a shuriken sticking out of his skin, one corner buried maybe a centimeter into his flesh, with a shallower scratch beneath it, showing the path of a second blade. He hadn't even noticed in the heat of the moment. "I have to say I wasn't expecting that," Sasuke admitted grudgingly. Harry winced as he started to ease the shuriken out of his arm. It hurt more when he pulled, but he knew it wouldn't start to feel better until it was out. "You still beat me," he stated, smiling despite the pain as he held out the other boy's weapon to return it to him, dripping a few drops of his own blood from the tip of one blade. "That's the most fun I've had in a while though. We should definitely spar again soon." Sasuke nodded. "You're pretty good, kid. Better than most of my classmates. You can spar with me anytime." Harry couldn't help but beam in reply. Kakashi nodded with silent approval from his perch at the edge of the field. Harry really has improved if he can keep up with an Uchiha 2 years older than him, Kakashi thought as he slowly backed away, leaving the two boys to flesh out their budding friendship. But I guess he really does need to start learning some ninjutsu. Harry awoke before dawn the next day and mused over the events that occurred the day before. He was excited about the prospect of learning more about the new children he'd met and attending the academy with them. While it was still a little odd building friendships with kids much younger than himself, he thought they were kind and fun, and he enjoyed their company. I wonder who will be the study-obsessed Hermione. Or the lazy one who has a knack for strategy like Ron. He smiled sadly as he remembered his two best friends before placing those memories aside to focus on the new task at hand. Harry decided to spend the early morning attempting his wandless magic again. He could feel his magic inside, much like how he could feel his chakra thanks to Kakashi. It was there, swirling in his abdomen, but he just didn't know how to force it out of his body without it sending stabbing pain wherever he tried to focus it. How do I fix this? There has to be a way around this pain so I will be able to use my wandless magic again. With a determined glint, he ignored the pain and began practicing with vigor. If I just keep practicing, it will come back. My magic has to work again. After attempting his wandless magic all morning, his body started to ache. It started out as a mild annoyance, but over the rest of the day, he could feel searing pain as if his blood was on fire. The moments of relative peace in between the pain grew shorter throughout the day. The pain became worse and worse until it started to affect his movements and made training almost unbearable. This lasted for a couple of days, with the pain getting increasingly worse, much to his chagrin. He was supposed to be starting the academy in a few days, and Kakashi definitely wouldn't let him if he wasn't able to train normally. Kakashi, apparently noticing something was wrong, called an early end to their most recent training session and trailed after him back to the apartment. "What's wrong?" He looked Harry up and down, searching for a reason for the boy's obvious pain. He didn't see any outward sign of injury, so he turned back to Harry and calmly waited for his explanation. "Nothing, I guess my body just needed a break today." Kakashi dropped his inquiry, but Harry could tell he didn't believe his excuse. Harry knew he should probably tell Kakashi what was going on, but he didn't want to bother Kakashi or anyone else with this problem. Even if he did tell him, what could he say? "I'm trying to gain back my magical ability, but it's only causing me pain." No, he would only be sent to a psychiatric hospital and then he would never become a shinobi. Maybe it will start to go away soon. Or at least he hoped. Maybe if I just lay off practicing for a while, it will go back to normal. By the next day however, Harry could barely move without grimacing. As soon as he walked out of his bedroom door, he collapsed and Kakashi immediately rushed over to him. "Harry. What happened?" Kakashi seemed at a loss of what was wrong, so he picked him up and headed out the door instantly. Even breathing was a struggle, with the expansion of his lungs only adding to his pain. "I don't know what happened," he whispered carefully, wincing as he was jostled in Kakashi's arms. "It's never been this bad before. But it seems as if I can't move my body anymore." "This has happened before?" Kakashi asked harshly. "And you didn't think to tell anyone about this?" Harry looked down, feeling ashamed. "I didn't think it would get this bad. It usually stayed in my arm and would go away eventually. I was going to tell you if it got worse." "Well, now it's worse, whatever it is. Let's get you to the hospital." Harry let out another hiss of pain as Kakashi turned a corner. The man's tone softened a little and he added, "Don't worry, Harry. We will figure out what it is and make this better." Kakashi carrying him, even though he was being careful, was only amplifying Harry's pain. He started seeing stars, his vision slightly darkened with bright pinpricks of blinding light burning into his skull. He figured he wouldn't last much longer before he fainted from the pain, but at least that would give him some relief. An airily giggle caught Harry's attention. "Don't worry, Harry. It's only the fatty giving you back what you've lost." A familiar blonde face peered down at him cheerily before he promptly passed out, her name on the tip of his tongue, but escaping as nothing more than a sigh of breath. End chapter 8. Chapter 9. Enter Luna. Harry woke up groggy. His body felt like stone, and he tried and failed to wiggle his fingers. Thankfully, he was able to open his eyes despite the inability to move the rest of his body. He peered around the room, taking in the white walls and plain bed sheets, and for a minute, he thought he was back in the hospital wing at Hogwarts. But instead of finding Hermione sitting next to his bed with a book in hand and Ron lazing about eating his chocolate frogs, he found himself all alone. "I will forever hate hospitals." A nurse came in and smiled brightly when she saw Harry was awake. She looked like a regular civilian, except for the calloused hands and light scarring on her forearms. It seemed even the healers saw a battle at some point, regardless of working in the confines of the hospital. She shuffled over to check his temperature and vitals. She had to physically open his mouth to put the thermometer under his tongue, much to his embarrassment. She then took out a rather large needle, and for a second, Harry panicked. That was not an ordinary needle and had no business in his room. She instead took the syringe and slowly inserted the liquid into a small tube connecting the saline bag to the back of his hand. "Don't you worry, child, you'll be fine. We have great doctors at this hospital, and they will be sure to figure out what is wrong with you." Harry tried to nod but couldn't, and the nurse gave him a sympathetic look. "Poor dear," he heard her say as she left the room, presumably to get his doctor. Harry closed his eyes, trying to gauge the damage to his body. He felt a small stinging sensation entering through the needle in his hand and assumed that was the medicine keeping the pain at bay. He groaned pitifully. "Why is this happening to me?" Whether it was from exhaustion or just the medicine taking effect, Harry slipped back into a dreamless sleep. What seemed like only moments later, though it could have been hours for all Harry knew, he woke up to see Guy and Genma standing in the doorway. "Hari-chan, how are you holding up?" "Yosh. My rival told me to let you know that he has escorted the one called Luna to speak with our friend Ibiki-san and will be coming over here after." Finally, he knew. It was Luna. Luna Lovegood was his sibling. He would have broken out into a wide grin if his mouth wasn't currently paralyzed. Weird, wonderful Luna who always found the beauty in life and never let her love of fantastical creatures fade away. Even through the war, she kept such a positive outlook on life and influenced others to follow suit. He remembered her small funeral, burying only a picture and her precious belongings because her body was never found. How poor Neville never got over his feelings for the eccentric Ravenclaw. She deserved better than that, he thought bitterly. If anyone deserves a second chance, she does. Then Harry's eyes widened with fear. What if she tells them something contradictory to my story? Would they do something to hurt her? I misread the fear in Harry's eyes. "Not to worry. If she is your sister, I am sure she is filled with the same youthful fire as you are and that will bring her to you soon. If not, I will do 1,000 push-ups." Genma leaned in close to Harry and pet his hair soothingly. "It'll all be fine, Harry. I know you said you don't remember her, but Kakashi said you recognized her before you passed out. Do you remember her now?" Harry tried to nod but instead grimaced in pain. Genma looked apologetic. "Sorry, Hari-chan. I forgot you couldn't move." Okay, blink once if she is your sister." Harry blinked once, feeling rather silly communicating that way. "Well, it will all work out soon then. And Kakashi is there and he cares about you, so I know he'll make sure she is all right. And maybe later on she can help you recover your memories." Genma and Guy sat with him for a while, talking about nonsensical things to keep Harry calm and alleviate his worries. But Harry couldn't help worrying about both. Luna, is she going to be okay? Will she say something wrong and be taken away forever? And his current state of paralysis. Did I do this to myself? In my desperation to have my magic back, have I put myself in a paralytic state forever? What if this is irreversible? What if Kakashi and all the people I've grown to care about don't want me here anymore? He could feel the tears forming in his eyes and was unable to brush them away. Genma, who noticed the tears, wiped them away softly. "It's gonna be okay, Hari," he said softly. "I promise, we are going to do everything we can to find out what's wrong and fix it. They don't know anything about magic. What if this isn't something a ninja can fix?" Despite Genma's comforting words, tears continued to slide down Harry's cheeks. "This is all my fault. I was an idiot for not stopping when my body told me to. What am I going to do now?" A tall cheerful man with a pepper-colored beard came through the door in a long white coat and thick black glasses, with Harry's normal doctor, Misaki, right behind him. Genma and Guy automatically shifted to one side of the bed, leaving the other side accessible to the doctor. "Well, if it isn't our mysterious little wolf boy," he said with a grin. "Misaki filled me in on your last physical and checkup." He placed his hands above Harry's torso and they began to glow green. I'm just running a diagnostic right now to see what the problem is. Our first medic couldn't find anything wrong, but I am the head medic in this hospital, so I am confident I'll be able to discover what is causing these symptoms. Harry studied the head medic as he ran his glowing hand slowly across Harry's body, watching his brow slowly crease in confusion. Masaki gave Harry a reassuring smile and stood at the edge of the bed, watching the other man work. The medic said finally, and his hands receded back to their normal state. Well, the good news is that there isn't anything wrong physically with your body. Bad news is, I don't know why you are in this paralytic state and in pain. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I think I have an idea. Fujioka-san. The nice nurse from earlier hastily entered the room. Yes, Yakushi-san. I would like for you to ask Hyuga-ko to spare a few moments to check our patient here. The girl nodded and quickly left. Well, Genma, Guy, could either of you explain the types of activities Hari has been doing the past week? About 30 minutes later, a young man with black hair and wide eyes came strolling into the room. He briefly glanced at Harry before turning his attention to the head medic. What can I do for you, Yakushi-san? I'd like for you to look at this child's chakra coils and see if there are any anomalies. He is unfortunately unable to move and in great pain, but we cannot find anything physically wrong with him. The Hyuga looked puzzled but heeded the medic's request. The man stared down at Harry and suddenly had protruding veins extending from his eyes. After a few moments of scrutinizing Harry's chakra coils, the Hyuga's eyes returned to normal. Well, Hyuga-san. I'm not really sure how to describe it, the Hyuga began slowly, but it seems as though there is a second set of chakra coils settling in. It appears as if it is merging with his main chakra coils, which is likely the cause of his immobility and the pain the child is in. A second set? How is that possible? Genma asked. I'm not sure. A Kekai Genkai of sorts. The head medic responded. Hyuga-san, how long do you think until the two coils will have completed this merger? The length of time is hard to judge without knowing the pace of the coils fusing. I will come check on them in a few hours and then I'll have a better idea of the duration. After Guy and Genma thanked him profusely, the Hyuga left them, promising to return later in the day. Well, this is good news indeed, Hari-chan. And what an interesting discovery. I can't wait to see how this turns out. The head medic looked positively gleeful, making Harry feel uncomfortable. Now, we just have to wait. The girl, perhaps only 15 or 16 years old, sat in the cold metal chair, humming happily in her seat. Kakashi and the Hokage sat on the other side of the window with Ibiki, studying the girl claiming to be Harry's sister. There wasn't much of a resemblance between the two. Her long, dirty blonde hair, pale gray eyes and delicate features, compared to Hari's dark hair, bright green eyes, and somewhat more angular face. She seems very comfortable for being in an interrogation room, Kakashi commented. The Hokage nodded in agreement. Enko? Ibiki barked out the door. She appeared instantly. Yes, Captain. I'd like for you to bring your snake in there and talk to her for a bit. See if this girl has the same snake-speaking ability as Hari. It would narrow down the possibility of them being related. Enko entered the room with Habu across her shoulders. Luna jumped up excitedly and cried, "Oh, so you must be a friend of Harry's. It's so nice to meet you." She shook the snake's tail vigorously, completely ignoring Enko, and then sat back down with a bright smile across her face. What? Enko stared slack-jawed at the blonde in front of her in disbelief. Ibiki echoed Enko's sentiments. Yes, the girl spoke to the snake, but not in the snake language Hari had spoken, but in Japanese. The girl is not a speaker, Habu stated to his mistress. But she does smell like him. They are from the same foreign place I do not know. So, Luna right. Yes, I am her. And she is me. Enko hesitated at the odd response. Ah, okay. So you are Hari-chan's sister? Yes, Harry and I are now siblings. He came here to look for me, but I wasn't awake yet. Now I'm awake so he can find me. You've been asleep this whole time? Enko asked curiously. Well, the fatties called it the in-between, and I did a lot of dreaming while I was in the place they had taken me. So you could say I've been asleep for a long time. Enko stared at her incredulously. Who are the fatties? Luna tilted her head slightly. The fatties are just who they are. They let me come here finally so I could be with Harry again. She is telling the truth, Ibiki stated, shaking his head slowly. I'm not sure exactly what it is that she is saying, but it is the truth. Poor child, the Hokage said sadly. Look underneath the underneath. It seems as if these fatties were her kidnappers and kept her confined for a long time. That must be why she was separated from her brother. It might have been a traumatic experience with them that caused our Hari to lose his memories. Kakashi made a promise to himself to give Hari an extra long hug when he went to see him at the hospital. He never realized that the young boy's life could have been so terrible before his arrival in Konoha. These fatties must have controlled what this Luna could do for the extent of her captivity. But why would they finally let her go after all this time? That is what I intend to find out, Ibiki stated, getting up from the chair and heading into the interrogation room. What does your snake have to say about our guest? Ibiki stated as soon as he entered the room. Abu says even though she isn't a speaker, she smells the same as Harry does. So girl, why were you released from your captivity and how long were you there for? They said it was finally time I could join Harry. I'm not sure how long I was there. Time flows differently than it does here. Luna flashed a huge smile. I'm just glad I'm able to finally be Harry's sister. Do you mean any harm toward our village or the Hokage? Of course not. You took Harry in when he was vulnerable and alone and have cared for him this whole time. Luna bowed her head. Because of this, I have nothing but love for the Hidden Leaf village. And because the Hokage reminds me of Headmaster Dumbledore. Ibiki wasn't sure what a Dumbledore was, but the girl's sincerity was apparent. She was no threat to the village or their leader. She seems harmless, Ibiki thought, rubbing his chin. But just like her brother, I'll be watching her. Barry woke up to Luna sitting attentively at his bedside. Luna? He cried excitedly and then gasped. He was able to speak again. He tried to move his left arm and it slowly responded to him. His fingers and toes felt like they were on pins and needles, but he grinned regardless. He was going to be able to move again. Well, Harry, it's good to finally see you again. Seems the Nargles have been here to keep you company. The twinkle in her eyes warmed Harry to the core. She looked exactly the same, her blonde hair filled with wild waves down her back and piercing blue-gray eyes. She only needed her radish earrings and butterbeer necklace to complete the look from her Hogwarts days. Finally a piece of his old life was here right in front of him and he couldn't be happier. Wait a minute. Why do you look the same and not like a little kid? Harry asked with a hint of jealousy. Well, the fatty said it was because I died. I stayed exactly the same, unlike you, who skipped the in-between and came here alive. So that must be why you went through the side effects. Harry wished for a moment that he had died before coming here and then realized he wouldn't be with Kakashi if that had happened. And he probably wouldn't have been trusted to enter Konoha in the first place. There were definite benefits of coming here in a younger body. He breathed deeply and finally decided to get some answers about his physical state. Why haven't I been able to use my magic except for my animagus form? Harry blurted out, voicing his fear for the first time since he had arrived in this world. I've been learning how to use chakra, but it's not the same as magic. If I can't perform any spells. Perhaps you couldn't perform any spells because magic doesn't exist here. Only chakra. She said the word slowly, as if she wasn't sure of the accuracy of her pronunciation. All of this was explained to me, but it's all very confusing, so I'll try my best. She hummed for a moment, tilting her head slightly. That's probably why it caused you pain when you attempted to bring it outside your body. When you tried to bring your magic outside your body, it came in contact with the chakra in the air. She waved her hand, gesturing the air around them. Harry stared at her, still confused, so Luna attempted to explain more clearly. Apparently there is chakra everywhere. In the air, the plants, the people. I was told chakra and magic are not supposed to mix, so when you tried to put magic into chakra-filled air, it must have backfired and caused you pain. You have both chakra and magic now, but they were separate. Maybe using magic inside your body for your animagus was okay because it didn't come in contact with any chakra in the air. She shrugged a shoulder. The fatty said your chakra and magic would merge slowly until they became one power source, but because you have been learning chakra while attempting magic, it must have caused it to happen more suddenly. Harry instantly felt ashamed. He should have known to stop attempting the spells over and over again. His 19-year-old self saw the stupidity in his actions. However, the 5-year-old part of Harry wanted to be able to complete a spell so badly that he ignored sense. The outcome was ending up temporarily immobile and stuck in a hospital bed. So, I'm never going to be able to use magic again. Of course you will be able to, Harry. Didn't you forget? You have a bloodline limit. My bloodline limit was never explained to me. Harry winced. He hadn't meant to yell. It wasn't Luna's fault the fates were so tight-lipped about everything. Oh well, that does answer why you've been worried about this. She paused and then gave Harry a warm smile. Sorry, it took me so long to get here and explain things. It took a very long time for me to wake up from all those dreams. They were very interesting dreams though. She seemed to daze off for a moment, lost in her thoughts. Harry cleared his throat softly to catch her attention. Oh, yes. Your bloodline limit, our bloodline limit, causes your magic and chakra to merge together. This is why you haven't been able to move. It takes a while for the two coils to merge, though in my unique case, mine merged instantly. So, you'll help teach me how to use the bloodline once I can move again. Of course, she replied softly, patting Harry on the hand delicately. As long as you teach me how to become an animagus. Of course I will, Luna. But why do you want to become an animagus all of a sudden? Well, it seems the Hokage thinks that transforming into an animal is an attribute of our family, so it only seems appropriate if I learn. And anyways, I've always wanted to be able to fly. But what if your animagus form isn't an animal that flies? Luna gave him a small smile before stating, I've already died, so aren't I supposed to have wings? End chapter 9. What if Harry Potter was in Team 7? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.